Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to another episode of HLTV Confirmed Podcast, episode 23 this time round. We've obviously just come off the back of ESL 1 Cologne, which I'm sure all the lovely Counter-Strike fans out there enjoyed. We are joined this evening by, I guess, one of the normal crew. Striker is here, but as well as that, we have Vendetta and Pimp. And we're going to make this one a special one. Striker, why is Prof not here?
He chose to prefer local scene to talking about ESL 1 Cologne, so that tells you about the kind of person he is.
Okay, a selfless individual giving back to the community, really.
Yeah,
really
exactly. That's exactly what I meant.
Okay. Speaking of someone who is selfless, we have, I was going to say Pimp here, but he's already slandered someone, so we'll go with Vendetta. Halvor, how are you doing?
I'm doing really well. Been enjoying some time off and watching some fantastic Counter-Strike. I mean, Cologne looked pretty fun from home at least, so I'm assuming it kind of felt the same being there.
Jacob, was it fun?
It was very fun. I mean, one of the best events that I've ever attended, both as a player, obviously, but also as an analyst.
Let's count one to how many times will Pimp mention his playing career over the course of the stream.
Is that a bingo thing? Are we doing that? Oh, hold on. I just cracked the beer.
Kind of like a running joke in the HLTV chat on Discord. Is
what
like
are the
how
best...
many times will Pimp mention his playing career?
You have to do it. I don't blame him. I do it less and less, but it's like you got to do. You got to remind people that it's happening. Anyway, everyone crack a cold one.
Should I get one?
Well, if it's handy, yes. If it's not, let's get stuck into this because we'll get past our first segment and then we'll get you into it. Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to start with the latest news. And just for newer viewers and for Halvor and Jacob, we're going to talk about the yay and nay segment, just so you guys understand. So this is something that I kind of just invented on the fly. Now we've actually got some things that are going to happen with it. I have a few topics to hit here. Now what we're going to do is we have, with these buttons, we're going to say yay or nay. You're going to hit yay or nay on the button. It's going to be about what we're talking about. Now, if we're all in agreement, I'll pick one of you to explain why, and we'll see if we all have the same logic. If one of us disagrees, or if we're split 50-50, we'll have a bit of a discussion about it. Some things that don't need too much talking about. But the first one will be the jump, throw, bind being cleared for use. Now, for those of you all who aren't familiar with that, it's to do with a bit of a single key script to be able to use to throw some jump smokes or jump flashes, nades, molotovs, whatever. So it's consistent, which has or was a point of contention back in 2015 when I was right then, and I'm still right now, and now it's legal. So we're going to yay and nay this one. So boys, yay or nay? Do we think it should be legal? Are we happy with this? Yay or nay? Hit the button. All right, well, there we go. So it's a little bit low, but we got there and we all got to that point at the same time. So we're all happy with it. So what we're going to do is when this happens, Striker, I'm going to come to you and you're going to explain the situation because I'm obviously very biased. And then we'll take some other opinions if we're different. Well, I was biased back then because I thought the reason to have it so that it was open for everybody was it would be opening up more opportunity for strategies because of consistency. And the difference takeaway between it being a 2-button bind and it being a single button bind was you could still get it 99.9% of the time with it as 2 buttons. It just made it more difficult for literally no reason. And I had an argument on Twitter back with all the pros when I was still playing in 2015 because the team at the time, Fnatic, were thinking it took less skill. But it's funny how now I'm pretty sure they'd be all for that, isn't it? Isn't that hilarious? 3 years literally changes nothing.
Everybody figured out the workaround with like those two, like having it bound to 2 keys instead of 1, which, like you say, it basically takes the same amount of skill. Like, okay, I can press 2 buttons at the same time now. Does that mean I'm more skilled than you? Of course not. Like it's exactly the same thing. It's just those like 0.1% of cases where you fuck it up somehow. Sure, it can still happen, I guess. So if we eliminate those, it's only good.
Just quickly, Jacob, you were still playing when this was a point of contention previously, and obviously it would have been a discussion point. When you were playing, what was the use case? Like, did you care, or did you use the 2-button bind? Like, what are we talking about here? What was
I was one
consensus?
I was one of the naysayers in the beginning, actually. Just in general, I didn't like the fact that you could do those, the jump script and all that kind of stuff. So I was against it in the beginning, but typical me, not really educating myself enough on the subject. So I guess it took us all by surprise back then because it was a relatively new thing, and when it really hit the scene, and everyone started to use it, you could elevate the tactical aspect of the game, and I guess some of us weren't ready for it back then. But it took me a few months, it took me a few weeks, and then I obviously was on board, and I'm a yay sayer now. So it is what it is. I don't really care whatever you use, 1 bind or 2 binds or 2 buttons. It doesn't matter. Whatever you're for, the fact that you're able to do jump smokes or not, that's the real question for me.
Okay, and how your stance on the yaying? Shit the same.
I'll just put it this way, because I think I was in the same boat as Jacob. That when it was initially discussed, there wasn't very differing between a one bind jump or an alias command or a two bind jump. That wasn't really the case. It was whether or not you were allowed to use a script, pretty much, to allow you to allow yourself to throw perfect smokes at every single instance. And I was against that, much for the same reason as what we saw with Fnatic, or what you said, Fnatic were talking about how it requires less skill, or it requires less ingenuity or creativity in terms of figuring out how to throw those various smokes at any given time, right? So if you actually have to find a reliable way to throw the window smoke for Mirage, instead of just setting up for the right same spot at each and every time and just click a button, I was leaning more towards that. But ever since they allowed the two bind, two bind jump into the tournament scene, then I don't see really any point in just not having the initial jump bind around just from the get-go.
So I think we're all on the same page that everybody eventually came to their senses. It just took a little bit longer, because I think ESL tweeted to say it's been allowed for them for some period of time. It's just something that wasn't discussed too openly. So we can move forward from this one. We'll move on to the next one. And this one here, Striker, maybe you have a little bit more context than me. This was about the whole Vitality skipping the New York qualifier situation. Do you know the news exactly? Because I've been in trend when all this has been going on.
It was just that I think on Sunday they put in their notice that they were going to skip the qualifier because basically they're busy, which kind of makes sense. Like they've got quite a lot going on there. Sorry, because I think they have the ESL Pro League qualifiers soon as well. So it's like a lot of things at the same time happening for them. Yeah, they have the MDL Europe Finals plus the Global Challenge coming up in a couple of days. So I guess that's in part why they skipped it, which kind of makes sense. I feel like the actual problem though is that they didn't get the invites, which I don't think we know all the invites to New York yet. I think we know a couple so far, but clearly they haven't been invited because they were about to play the qualifier. But yeah, I feel like that's more the discussion, that they didn't actually get the invite rather than them skipping the event, because that kind of makes sense with all that they have going on.
All right, so let's yay or nay based on their decision here to do it, because I think talking about the fact that they weren't invited is probably a different scenario altogether. Sure. With their meteoric rise in recent times. So let's ready. We're gonna hit the button. 3, 2, 1. Yay or nay to them skipping this and that being their choice. Go for it. Gotta wait for the load time here. Vendetta's ahead of the curve. I'm always the last one, but we all agree again. So Halvor, you being first, why do you think it's a good idea?
I mean, if you think about it, yeah, sure. I mean, it'd be nice to attend IEM New York, but it's not like that's, the pinnacle of the CS calendar by any means, right? Like, if you have the opportunity to secure yourself a spot in Pro League, you're going to be, returning to that, given, not completely shitting the bed and going into relegation. That's something that you can latch onto. So for Vitality to prioritize that, which also has a bigger finals as well, it's a no-brainer.
You got any thoughts on why they may, or why you think it's a good decision on this, Jacob? Anything outside the box?
Nah, I think I'm just a big fan of team actually prioritizing their calendars. I think it's been a problem for a long time. We have been talking about oversaturation. We've been talking about teams, not knowing how to deal with the problems, knowing how to deal with scheduling their calendar, and that's why they're always complaining about the oversaturation. Now we finally see teams, again led by Astralis, obviously in a extreme case, maybe a little bit too much. But the fact that teams are scheduling their calendars, they're prioritizing their events and making sure that they can stay on top, both mentally and healthy. And if the consequence is that you have to skip a few events for that, then I'm all on it. In the end, I feel the teams know themselves the best themselves. So we can talk about, whatever it makes sense or not in terms of, prestige and what event it is and all that kind of stuff. But if the team needs a break, or if the team feels that's the right decision, then I'm all about it. The fact that they're even going that far and thinking of, mental health and making sure you can peak at the right tournaments and at the right times, I think is a healthy step for Vitality and a healthy step for the CSGO scene.
Yeah, I think right now, for people who maybe don't look at the calendar section or the events tab, on HLTV.org, that's probably the best place to put your attention, right? And if you have a look at the dates for New York, it is in fact on the 26th of September to the 29th of September. Before that, the week before, is Blast Pro Series in Moscow. And then after that, almost directly after that is DreamHack Masters in Malmo. So Astralis and Optic are currently only two teams with Malmo, so I'm going to assume there's a high probability of Vitality have been invited to that. And with Blast Pro Series, right now we have ENCE, Na'Vi, and NIP. There is a chance Vitality may have been invited, but it would be more of a slim one, right? So that event is bookended by two other events in different parts of the world. So I understand as well from that perspective. And then if you look at the now, you guys already covered that. They're playing in a bunch of tournaments at the moment. So it's good for the now and it's good for the future. I think, we'll get to this later, but despite all the things that we had happen with teams, missing certain events, New York, I think, is just another 8-team event. So, we're always going to be missing some of the bigger names there. Strike, you got anything to add to this one?
Not really, no.
All right, well, next one. We're almost through the latest news, the breaking news. So this one here is going to be a bit more of a broader topic, but what we've gone with is Mixwell returns to North America. So obviously the Cloud9 situation here. So look, first of all, we'll stick with the Mixwell as a choice himself. For those who don't remember Mixwell when he was in Optic, wasn't he put in like a house on his own in the middle of nowhere away from...
I think for a while he was living there alone, and then somebody joined him, but I think it was like maximum 2 people being there all the time, I'm pretty sure. But he was there for a period of time, basically alone, which kind of sucks, yeah.
But it wasn't in LA, was it?
No, it was in... where was
somewhere up north.
It was in the middle of nowhere somewhere.
It was like...
Great house.
I don't remember.
Yeah, so with that in mind, like if we just look at the Mixwell situation, I think LA for him... Quick, let's do the yay or nay thing. I forgot, I got to use these tools. If Lucas is going to make them, we may as well fucking use them.
Might as well.
Okay, so I think from my perspective, the fact he's in LA and this team has just dealt with Golden, they've had Cajun B, Kiyoshima came through, Flusher, they've had to deal with having players come from Europe quite regularly, right, over the last 12 months, I would say it is. So for them, it's probably fine, and he's going to be... I think Daps is down there in LA at the moment. I follow him on Instagram. It looks like he's down there doing all that kind of fun stuff. So I guess they're going to be together. So we can probably open this discussion up less about Mixwell because...
I mean, for him, it's a no-brainer, right? Like,
yeah,
for him to finally get out of the Spanish scene again, by the way, after like kind of realizing probably that it wasn't going to lead anywhere. This must be a great move for him, because there's the Movistar riders weren't really going anywhere relevant anyway.
It is a no-brainer. It is a no-brainer, because actually I can enlighten you a little bit on that. When I was playing in Liquid, haha, striker.
Number 3, by the way.
Liquid were in talks with him and Rush about joining our team when they were playing in Optic. So the whole Optic lineup obviously had the success of the E-League thingy, but after that never really saw any success. The team kind of fell apart, and Liquid were very interested in acquiring Mixwell and Rush at a certain time. Who they would have replaced? Well, probably me and JDM at the time, I think. At least that's what I was told. But Mixwell back then wanted to move to America, but only if he could get an apartment with his girlfriend. So that was his one requirement, and Liquid couldn't fulfill that at the time being, because they wanted us together in this gaming house that we lived in. So I think Mixwell missed out on a big opportunity back then, and I think that's part of why he was ready, or was so ready to jump on this one, because him in Liquid back then would have been an interesting prospect, and I think he could have done well instead of JDM together with Rush potentially instead of me. Then I think that lineup back in Liquid could have been even better than we were at the time being. So I think he regrets that. I think he maybe thought that he had more leverage to negotiate with Liquid at the time being. But as far as I would know, the negotiations fell apart basically because they couldn't agree in terms of where he wanted to live and how he wanted to live his life with a set girlfriend at the time being. So the fact that he gets to go back to LA now and get back to Cloud9, potentially without a girlfriend or potentially without that requirement, I think is a healthy thing for him. And as Striker said as well, the fact that he gets out of Spain is only going to be all positive.
It might be though that now he can have his girlfriend there. For example, I don't know if he's still dating the same girl. Right, we're talking about someone's love life right now. But
sure.
what we do know is, at least from my experience talking to more and more teams, is it's starting to be less team house based and more office facility with homes relatively close to that space, right? So I know Renegades are moving in that direction. I think MIBR
are working that way for a long time now.
I think that's important, right? Because in the beginning, we kind of were basing what we were doing off what South Korea have done, right? With their camps for all these StarCraft 2 players and League of Legends players and all these guys in the early days, where they would literally, like a room as big as my bedroom, and this place it's a pretty decent size, they would have just a shitload of bunk beds and stuff, and they'd all just live there and play fucking video games, right? That's what they do. That's how they train. And then when we transitioned into team houses for Counter-Strike, I think that was the same thing. Let's put them all in the same space. They're a bunch of kids. We can control them. It's fine. But the thing is, people are adults, right? And I think to work like anything, you need a routine. You need to be able to go back to your own space, which isn't necessarily, completely surrounded by Counter-Strike. And then, it's more like a job. So, maybe you have 4 days where you go into the office and you prac hard. You have 2 days where you prac from home and you get more of like a looser schedule, something like that. Some of the teams I've spoken to are looking at doing models along those lines. So maybe he could have something like that. But yeah, for his career, it's a great decision. It is a great decision. I want to think, though, let's talk broader right now. Let's do the yay or nay thing again. Do we think this is a good decision for Cloud9? Here we go. Let's see if mine comes through first this time. I hit it real hard. I hit it real quick. Yes. I've come through first. Oh, Jacob now. The last one here. It's Jacob and I. Okay. So we'll do it this way. Halvor, why do you think it's good for Cloud9?
Because it can't be any worse than what they were doing.
Oh, okay. We've gone that direction. Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, my thumbs up is more because of the state they find themselves in, right? Like, that was just going nowhere. I think now at least you have something to kind of hang your hat on in that sense. You have some exciting prospects. Tense is obviously going to be fun to watch for that Cloud9 lineup. So yeah, I think there's more of a direction with what they're doing now, more so than what they were doing with the old lineup. And yeah, that's really the only reason why I've gone with yay, because again, I think you could have gotten potentially a better team together, but they kind of have to start from scratch right now and show that they can do something, because I mean, Cloud9 have quickly turned into a bit of a laughing stock when it comes to CS, at least. I mean, if you think about the heights they had in 2018, at least with the major, and then where they found themselves for the better part of 2019, then yeah, I mean, you can't do any worse.
Okay, so I think that I'm going to throw the second part of this to Jacob, but I just want to clarify what we're probably all thinking. I think we all probably agree this is better than what they were doing. Yep. But let's look at the roster they have. So it's Kusta, Daps, Tens has come on in, Automatic obviously stays as the mantelpiece, and then Mixwell comes in as well. So that's the roster for those of you who aren't too aware. Jacob,
what was that, Jacob?
No, so just somebody
saw the
pulling inside my
reaction.
wall. I think my apartment is about to break down. I don't know
oh,
what
Jesus Christ.
is going on. Yeah.
But
Continue.
with that in mind, the roster in mind, and the point being made about it can't be worse than it was, because I think we all agree with that. Do you think Mixwell fits the other 4 players of this roster, or do you think he can fit the other 4 players of this roster, Jacob?
Sure. Sure he can. I think Mixwell is a great signing. I think potentially getting Depths is a great signing. If Golden would have wanted to stay in Cloud9, I think I would have preferred Golden. At least, I think that's a 50-50 between those two. I think for Cloud9, it's as Halvor said, it's great that they're doing something finally, but to me it's just disappointing. I think it's lack of ambition. I can't help to think about North as well when they were requiring Cadian. It's like, you go out in the public, you have a team with the history of Cloud9. You have a guy called Automatic on the team as well, who is, to my understanding, potentially one of the best players in the world. If he could actually get a team around him that worked, I think he has a lot of potential. And you're wasting that talent, you're wasting that whole position you have as a Cloud9 organization by doing something mediocre. You're bringing in Kusta, yeah, sure, he's a fine player, but let's be honest, he's nothing more than just fine. You bring in Mixwell, who potentially could be really, really good together with Automatic, and then you're bringing in Daps, who, yeah, sure, he's a great in-game leader, but again, if the best you're going to get out of that lineup is potentially a top 10, and then you'll anyway have to, switch out players and all that kind of stuff and do some shuffling. So I think it's great that they're doing something, finally acting, but I really do hope that this is part of something bigger. I hope this is them preparing to attract bigger names or better players for the future, because otherwise, if this is the team that we're supposed to believe is going to be the new flagship of Cloud9, I'm, as a Counter-Strike fan and also a little bit of a Cloud9 fan, is heavily disappointed.
Okay, so Striker, with that in mind, with that side of the nays coming out, what do you make of this? Why do you think it is a good move for Cloud9?
The question is, could they have gotten a better offer? Basically, like we probably most people were looking towards Wardell as being a really good potential signing for them. God knows why that didn't come through. Whether they even wanted to go that route, whether they wanted to, even thought about him as an option, we don't know. At least I haven't heard anything either. We haven't even heard any rumors about him being potentially in talks with Cloud9. So maybe they didn't even consider him, and God knows why. But that's basically what you need to answer. Like, if they didn't really have a better offer, why wouldn't this be a good signing? Because let's be honest, Cloud9 don't really have the power to draw like some of these better players from the region, because they obviously, as a team, haven't been working out for more than a year now, a year and a half almost, ever since their major win, basically. So nobody from that region, at least not from the bigger teams, want to go over to Cloud9 at this point. So for them to get a better offer, they would have to look into the lower tier, which would include somebody like Wardell and nobody else, as far as I can remember right now. I don't think there's anybody else that was on the line. So for them to look into Europe kind of makes sense. And obviously in Europe, it would again have to be somebody from the second or third tier of teams, because nobody from Europe really wants to move into North America, because they usually have better opportunities there. So it kind of makes sense, to be honest.
You think with what you're saying there, Mixwell is going to do the primary AWPing duties? You think that's going to be the case?
I think it could be.
Yeah, I guess the question mark is, though, when you have Kusta, Automatic, who's been doing the primary AWPing, and then you have Mixwell. There's 3 players who basically at this moment, the way that I would consider them, at least historically, are all
I would
riflers
be surprised if it was Kusta, because of what I heard regarding Ghost, that he was he even gave up the secondary op, as far as I remember. So for him to just suddenly going back to the primary would be kind of surprising. And for Automatic to keep doing it, I don't think that makes sense, just because of even Valence kind of admitted that it wasn't an ideal situation for him to take over AWPing, because it's just so hard to replace him in the rifling role. And there's nobody else who can do that on this team at this point, and not unless Tens just suddenly steps up and becomes some kind of a god, like a new Prodigy or something. So we expect Automatic to go back to rifling, where he obviously had the most impact. Sure, with the op he was still great, but it's just the team was missing something in the rifling department, and so that's why I think he was going to go back. And with Kusta, that's what I said earlier, that I don't think he wants to op anymore, not primarily, so I think it just falls onto Mixwell.
Okay, I can see that. Jacob, you had something to say?
Yeah, I mean, it's just because when you think about it, back in the days, I think the primary reason Mixwell wanted to leave Optic was that he didn't want to primarily operate. He didn't want to do it. He was he felt he was better as a rifler. He felt he was misguided as a player. He felt that he could do much more with a rifle and all that kind of stuff. And it's you have so many, as you said before, would you please? You had so many questions before in terms of roles, and to me this lineup as a whole just doesn't seem well thought through. As you said before, why not get a Wardell? Why not look towards Europe? There's plenty of talent over here and I still don't buy that, to be completely honest, Striker. If you have the money and you have the infrastructure that Cloud9 has, you should be able to attract some of the best players, or at least some of the best talents within the world, if you really look hard enough and you really do your scouting well enough. I think that this is...
can you come up with somebody from Europe, or somebody who's available at this point, or at least is in a team that is potentially worse or couldn't get up to a level that a Cloud9 could? I mean, who do you have anybody specific in mind, though?
I haven't thought about it, but I've had to do some digging, right? But you could definitely scout players. You could definitely go in there and poke some teams and poke some players. One that comes to mind to me is a guy like Merch, for example. I think he's shown great potential on both North and Heroic. Obviously, he's dealing with some whatever his personality issues, attitude issues. I don't know, but the talent. In terms of raw talent, he definitely has. If you can bring him to NA, you can nurture him, you can coach him.
There are some warning signs there, though. Yeah, he obviously got released from 2 teams in a row pretty closely.
That's what I'm saying, right? But if you really dig deep enough and you really do your scouting well enough, and I think that's something that the scene as CSGO in general maybe need to mature a little bit in, because you should have guys, working for the organizations who know the scene well enough that can do that scouting for certain teams, and dig out stuff about players, whatever they be a good fit for each other. To me, when you look at this Cloud9 lineup, and when you look at a lot of roster moves being made around some of the big organizations as well, it doesn't always make sense in terms of how the players are and react in certain situations, in terms of attitude, in terms of what do they like, what do they don't like, and all that kind of stuff. So to me, it seems rushed through, especially when you're considering the roles in Cloud9 as well, with Mixwell now back to primary AWPing, Kusta, who gave up AWPing, now gave up secondary AWPing, became a rifler, and again, just a mediocre rifler. It's not like he's a bright talent within that region. So to me, it's just disappointing.
I mean, I think there's a fair few things that you can, I guess, latch onto with that. One thing is that, well, obviously after Optic, Mixwell didn't find anywhere near the same success as he did there. So that might have been a bit of a sobering moment for him, realizing that, okay, I might feel like I'm a better rifler than I'm an opper, but teams value me more as an opper. I have more impact. I do more for a team as an opper, in certain situations than I would do as a rifler, because maybe there's more competent riflers more so than oppers. So that's where I'll need to make my contribution and that kind of a thing. And that's why he's okay with this kind of a move.
But he has been opening in Movistar though.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a kind of a realization thing, right? Like he goes back to Europe and he's like, I'm going to be a rifler now, and nothing comes of it. She's like, oh, for us to actually win games, I have to go back to opping. Like that should tell you everything. Like that, at that point, you're not competent enough as a rifler to carry your team through. If you can do that with an op, then the answers write themselves. And I think in terms of just finding, hidden gems or talents, whether it's in North America or Europe or wherever you want to go in terms of region, one thing is, and this is something you can attest to as well, Jacob, which I'm kind of surprised by the fact that you didn't latch onto, that if you bring over a young talent from Europe, regardless of his past, disregard, let's say, Mertz being dropped from 2 teams and whatnot, it's a very big change of scenery. Going from living in Europe, having basically familiar territory and an atmosphere around you, basically like an everyday life that to moving over to a completely different country, completely different culture, and still being able to kind of just dive into Counter-Strike. Obviously, you can't do that just 100% of the time. You will burn out. That will be a net negative over the course of time. So you need to have something else to distract you from. Are you going to be able to create your own network of friends or just activities that you can do in that different space? And that's not necessarily given for everyone. So I think that needs to be accounted for as well. So nearly regardless of how good you can be as a talent or a prospect, what kind of mechanical skill you might have, it's also that, I guess, sense of maturity that some of these players need to have in order to make that kind of a move. I think it requires a special type of person to be able to deal with that properly.
Let me just quickly give you a great example before we move on. Magic's boy, or Magic's, or whatever we want to call him.
Yeah.
When I played with him in SK Gaming, and God knows that I wasn't, the best kid either myself. I also had attitude problems from time to time. I also had some personal stuff that I needed to work on. So did he. He was very young back in SK Gaming. He was not, mature. He was not always, enjoyable to play with. Then he moved on to Optic. I can imagine that would have been a rough time too. And then you get him on Astralis. When they got him on Astralis, I am 100% sure that he changed his mentality. I'm 100% sure he had to change his mentality if he wanted to stay within Astralis, because they don't deal with immature stuff. They don't deal with people raging or not working with the team or for the team and all that kind of stuff. That's simply just to be expected by them. So, as you said, sometimes a change of scenery is all it takes for a talent that has already been showcased, which Magic's boys definitely had back then. Just need to facilitate it, need to make sure that he feels comfortable in the surroundings, need to make sure that he has the needed respect for his in-game leader. Glaive, obviously, you can't not respect him, you can't not respect Astralis, the infrastructure they have, and they got some of the best out of Magics that we've ever seen, and they got the best team ever to touch Counter-Strike out of that. So players with attitude problems can definitely be reformed into something good. The most important thing is that they show the talent, and then you can always work on the persona, you can always work on the player and make sure that you facilitate him to just, showcase that talent all the time. And that's what I mean when I say that I think teams should seriously consider hiring people that can scout players for them when this is needed. Cloud9 is a multi-millionaire organization, and they're supposed to be one of the best teams within the world in CSGO. So the fact that they haven't done that, or at least the fact that I get the sense that they haven't really thought this through, is to me not good enough.
All right, so we're going to put a pin in this one because we could probably go all night talking about my favorite team, Cloud9, and hopefully when I go to Blast, I can get a Cloud9 jersey, because I'm going to be a Cloud9 fan now, because they finally like this. The only reason I voted nay, and this is nothing against Mixwell, I think he's a good player. I just didn't want them to get any European imports. I wanted them just to go back to the core. Right. There's no need for a European import. I think it's just a waste of time, because there's no way Mixwell lives in America for the rest of his life. If Mixwell lives in America for the rest of the life, props to him. But it's not going to happen. I said it with the other players. I'll say it again. It's a temporary thing. Get someone who lives in the country. Get somebody of like-minded values. Pick up a kid, who's a fucking prodigy, or fucking buy Wardell out of his contract. But what I want to do is, Lucas, if you could open up a vote right now, we'll collect the results when we get to the end of our next topic, about what the community thinks. I don't know if this is possible. About what all of our users in chat. So you guys can say whether you think it's a good decision or not, and we'll just readdress it later in the show, because obviously we're split on it, so I want to get your opinion. But yeah, hopefully Cloud9 are on the up and up. So we're going to move forward to the next one, which is, in fact, we're going to be talking about should Colombia be a major. Now, I think we could probably get through this one pretty quickly, and I think we're all going to have a very similar sentiment. So we're going to get the vote ready, vote, 3, 2, 1, go, get it in there, and then we'll quickly talk through this one.
Can I do both? Like, is there a halfway through?
I thought that we would all say yes, but then we would all say it should be a major, but it also shouldn't be a major, because then we will have one less good event every year.
Yeah,
I guess
like,
that's
it should be a major, but it doesn't have to be a major. Basically,
yeah,
is
exactly.
the point.
If it just had in-game support like a major, in the sense of the video was embedded in the client, not like it is now, where you click this button and it takes you to Twitch. That's fucking dog shit. It's better than nothing. Sorry, let me try again. It's better than nothing. But I would love it if they just had it embedded in the client so viewers who open CS could watch it. That's all I think. I think that it's obviously a major caliber event, but it would be nice if it just had a little bit extra exposure. So
I think that's more down to, but I don't want Cologne, because Cologne is so special without it being a major. I think that it's fairly unique in that sense, right? So I don't think it need the, I guess, added support, if you want to call it that. Even though, yes, I do definitely think that's the right way to go about it from Valve's side. Not necessarily, throw in extra money, but at least
don't
have
need
the implementation.
money.
Yeah, have the implementation into the client, so as many eyes as possible can actually get to watch some of the greatest Counter-Strike that we're going to see throughout the year. That's really the only thing I would like to add. But I don't think you need to have. It shouldn't be a requirement for a tournament to be a major for that to be a common occurrence. I think it should be for pretty much any premier tournament that we have throughout the calendar year should be embedded into CS:GO. Like it's not hurting anyone, so you just stand to gain from it.
I want to run a quick experiment here with the chat. Now I don't know how long the delay is. Let's say the delay is fucking. Okay, so the delay is in the realms of 15 seconds, depending on all the nonsense. People in chat. Now, Lucas, I'm going to need you to Google this to find the actual answer. And we're going to need to check and see. So I'm going to give the window of chat 30 seconds after I say this to someone to get the right answer. Does anybody in chat know the prize money for something like the English Premier League, for example? Because if we can move away, like majors right now, and what makes a major is the stickers, the in-game client, all that kind of stuff. But no, like and the prize money. But Cologne is like an amazing event without the prize money. So is Katowice. What we want is we want to know we shouldn't be worrying about the prize money. We should worry about the prestige of the tournament, right? And if ESL runs their tournaments to that caliber and that level with the production and all that kind of stuff, and the players are happy and the format's competitive and all this kind of bits and pieces are going on, then that's all we should worry about. We shouldn't worry about how much money anyone's taking home. From esports, all we fucking push is the prize money thing. The Intel Grand Slam is different, obviously, because it's an amalgamation. It's like it's like winning. Well, it's obviously different to tennis, but I think it's different in a certain regard. But the events themselves, people should want to win because of the prestige behind them. And that's something that ESL is always going to have over a lot of other tournaments, is the legacy, right? Because they've been doing this the longest. So I don't think anybody got the right answer. I've had people fucking throwing out.
I've seen like 25 different numbers over the last half.
36.1 million, 150 million, 10 walnuts, 2.5 billion, 50 million, over 100 million, 200K. I don't know. What's the answer, Lucas? Okay. Yeah, some teams split get rev share. Okay. So that's from TV rights and stuff. Yeah. Okay. So like those things are different, right? We're never going to have a home ground for Counter-Strike. Like we have to make up the money in rev share from streams. But I think the good thing with Cologne is it's looked at, like, I don't think Valve need to give it more prize money or any of that shit. Just give it like in-client featuring a little bit more than what we have, and it's fine.
I disagree a little bit though.
Okay.
I think maybe that's because I'm out of touch, from back when I was playing Striker. Well,
is that 4 or 5?
It's like 6, man.
I'm just pushing it now. I'm pushing the limit. Back when I played, Chat, and back when you played, because obviously our salaries wasn't as great as they are today. Like players are getting paid, ridiculous amount of money, on a monthly basis. So prize money was very important to us. I guess you can agree with that. But I also feel that not only did the money, mean something in terms of the price, but also in terms of building up the prestige, right? You mentioned it yourself, having the Intel Grand Slam and all that kind of stuff. It just adds an extra layer to it, I feel, when the prize money is up there. And I don't think you can compare it to the Premier League or whatever, football or whatever it is, because they don't have, 25 different competitions they can participate every single year. They only have that one thing, which is the league. So that's the most prestigious one, and that's what they play for. And they're basically getting paid only to play in that league and in the Champions League, where they also do get a cut of the prize money and TV rights and all that kind of stuff, which teams also do now. When I was playing in Liquid, that was introduced by Liquid and ESL, I believe, that players have a revenue share of the Pro League, for example. So if the Pro League makes money, well, the players playing in the Pro League also does make money if they have good enough contracts with the said organizations. So that's already part of it. That's already being built into the contracts. That's already, part of the the circuit within a Counter-Strike player, but having prize money to a tournament adds an extra layer to me. I would love to see Cologne being a $1 million tournament. If not for the players, then for the hype it would create around it. I don't necessarily think that the players care that much about it, but I do believe that it is, especially for a lot of the elder guys who have not grown up with the prize money be 250k every single tournament. I think it means something to them, and to me it also does, to be honest.
I think the point here is that the amount of money shouldn't be the focal point, and it shouldn't add hype. Okay, I'll use a better example than I would have Premier League. Here's a better example: tennis. Okay, tennis. Can anyone guess in chat what the prize money is if somebody wins Wimbledon? Because I have no idea. But if you win Wimbledon, you're a fucking baller, right? That's what we want to get to. We want to get to the point where if you win Wimbledon, or you win the Australian Open, or if you win the American Open, or if you win the French Open, those are the creme de la creme. I don't know if that's the way to say that correctly, but it sounded nice. Prize money? Okay, so no one would have got that. No one in the chat would have got that.
That's total prize money, though. The winner of the tournament gets about $2.5 million.
Okay.
But let's relate it to something that is somewhat relatable, right? Golf.
No,
but
you're looking at it. You look like, oh, okay, you're going to another sport. I thought you were going to say another esport. Okay,
No,
give me golf. Give me golf.
Give me golf.
Do you know how
right?
much they win if they win the fucking what's the most famous golf course?
I don't know
the Masters. Wouldn't it be the Masters?
But why don't my
you have the
point
PGA
here...
Tour, and the Masters are always the Masters.
Sure.
Okay, so it doesn't matter really if you come first or second. Okay, so Jacob, what's the
No,
point?
it's just a million.
It doesn't matter.
It's just
why do we have to choose between the two? Why can't we have both?
Because what I'm showing you here is that the situation with money should be the least important topic. That should be the least important topic. It should be going and knowing that all the best players in the world want to go in for this, because the thing that should differentiate competition and a job is the fact that when you compete, the only thing that you think about when you go into that server, in our case, is beating the absolute fucking dog's balls off your opponent. Sure. Is leaving everything that you've got in the server and performing to the absolute best that you have, and getting that absolutely amazing feel of elation when in front of 15,000 screaming Counter-Strike fans and hundreds of thousands at home, that you just fucking outthought 5 other guys in a puzzle game that fucking shooting people in the head, and that's the thing that you're obsessed by and you love, and that when you were fucking 14 years of age, you were sitting on the toilet taking a shit thinking about, you couldn't wait to get off and go play some Counter-Strike and practice your AK-47. That should be the only thing coming through everybody's mind. And if we're relying on, say, like social media or like news to pick it up and go, oh, they won $1 million. Sure, we're still like early, but what we should want is that never to be the point. The point should be, we have the best tournament with the best players and the best fans. That's all we should want. We shouldn't give a fuck about the money, because the Olympics, people will bring that. I'm pretty sure you don't get prize money for winning anything in the Olympics, but it's one of the most, it's one of the highest feats of accomplishment in the athletic world, right? The Olympics happens once every 4 years. Everybody from every country, the best of the best, go and compete, and not only are they competing for themselves, but they're also competing for nationalistic pride, which is one of the biggest things that our people, fucking go for as well. And that's why I have Finnish fans talking shit, or I have Cloud9 fans who are American talking shit, or I have fucking French fans talking shit. This is why people come at us, because of the nationalistic tribalism bullshit of all this stuff. So the prize money should realistically be the last thing. In my opinion.
I mean, just look the best example of this would probably be WSG. No amount of money will make you watch like a team, like a number 25 team from Asia playing against number 10 from whatever, South America. I don't know. I'm just throwing somebody out there, right? So WSG, which is to this day, I think still the most prize money that we've seen.
I think so, yeah.
I don't think anything has taken over it since. And nobody really cares about it, right? Like, maybe people watch like the late stages of the playoffs, but up until that point, like, a lot of the time it doesn't even have streams for all of the matches. So it's like, that kind of tells you about like what the money actually has to say.
Idealistically speaking, and what you just said, Chet, I don't disagree with anything. I think it's a no-brainer that like what we want is exactly what you said. It shouldn't be about the prize money. It should be about the dignity, about the prestige, and about the tournament itself, and the best matchup, the best players going up against each other. But that's like, to me, that's wishful thinking. It at some point you gotta dig deep down enough to understand that it goes hand in hand, right?
Yeah,
Cologne has only, Cologne is only the event it is today because it was one of the first big tournaments to actually put in those prize money, and they, the city embraced it, Cologne embraced it, and ESL embraced it.
ESL doing it year after year is why it's still there, right? There's no reason that any of these individual TOs, for example, E-League, who have the most money out of every single TO, the reason that E-League don't come back and put on tournaments is probably,
They don't make money.
Well, they don't make money. That's the reason. So they're a business. They don't make money. They don't give a fuck about the game. E-League just give a fuck about money. So all of you out there who like get all up in arms, go, oh, E-League's amazing, bring back E-League tournaments. They could put on tournaments. They have the most money in the world. It's fucking Turner. They got more money than they know what to do with. Why don't the cunts put on tournaments? Because they don't make any money from it. If it doesn't make money, well, then there's no need for a business like Turner to be doing something like that. Why do other companies, who do it? First of all, they're hoping to break through like what you're implying here, or esports is all they do. Right? That's what a lot of these tournaments, just esports is all they do. And also, I think that the prize money will continue to grow, but we need to grow like fucking shoes, right? Like, I'm talking about
how do you grow shoes?
Yeah, I was about to say, where are you going with this?
Listen. I should have said you grow like feet, all right? So when you're a kid, like depending on how you age is depending on like, obviously the size of your feet. Everyone's feet stop growing at a certain point. But my point here was, as we grow, so as we get bigger as an esport or as something that's watched in the world, the prize money will also grow. So we need to get the more viewers that watch. Well, we need fucking bigger shoes, so we need bigger prize money. I agree with you that prize money, would be cool. It would be really cool if there was $10 million available. But the point is, it shouldn't be necessary. Because if there was $10 million available at prize money at every event, I could get paid more. So that fucking would rock for me. But I just think it has to grow to that point. You think about how quickly it went from tournaments quite sporadically in 1.6 days. Obviously, there was still a circuit, but it isn't like it is now. To CSGO, where it's happening all the time, and there's ridiculous sums of money being around. I think we just have to grow with the growth of the game, right?
But I think we've already done that. I mean,
what do you mean?
We've stagnated in prize money. Like
I know, but what are you talking about,
point,
Jacob?
right?
How long has like traditional sports been around for? Fucking Lucas. What's the biggest sport in the world? How long has football? Tell me when football was first invented.
And you're well aware that's constantly changing, right?
Pretty sure football like kicking a ball.
1839. Think about the lead-in from 1839 and the acceleration over that period of time. What you're talking about is something which appears over. We just literally had the 20-year anniversary of Counter-Strike, and you already want what Valve have done with Dota is ruined the perception for everybody.
What is it you think that I want?
More prize money in tournaments.
I would like more prize money in tournaments. I'm not saying, as I said before, it's like when we always discuss. I feel I try to look at it from both sides, right? It's a marketing tool for the tournaments to attract better team and attract better players.
Well, we can do this one quickly. Do you think that players get paid more than they should? We can work this one out quickly. Do you think players get paid more than they should?
No.
I do. That's why I don't think we need more prize money. Players earn way more money than what they actually contribute. They just play a fucking video game.
They earn the money they're offered. You don't
of course they do.
Exactly.
But this is the prize money they're offered. This is what I'm talking about. No player is going to be earning more than 20 or 25,000 euros anymore. No one will ever get offered a contract better than that. I would say a lot of these teams negotiating are getting offered less money and saying, hey, we'll renegotiate, we'll have better terms elsewhere, but we'll take some of your salary away. I would say that that's happening already.
It's probably stagnated, and I will agree with you. Like we did live in a bubble, and we did live in a world where G2 just screwed over the entire economy system, offering those players insane contracts, Kenny S, Shocks, and whoever they were called back then. But yeah, sure, we stagnate, but then we grow again. Like if esports is there to stay, you just said it yourself, for 20 years we had our anniversary now. If we expect 20 more years, then it will grow at some point. And
of course it will, but that's the point.
Yeah, all I'm saying is that all the stuff that you just idolized before, all the stuff that you just talked about, you want the tournaments to be about the players, about the teams, and the prestige, you want that feeling. I definitely do agree with you. I don't think anyone could disagree with that. But if money is a marketing tool for the tournaments to attract those players and attract those teams in order to play in the tournaments, then let it be. And then I wouldn't mind if we got more prize money. I don't care who pays for it. I don't care if it's Intel or if it's another big sponsor, as long as they can attract those teams that will play at those tournaments and make you feel like you did about Cologne. That's all I'm saying.
Well, here's the cycle of how this works and why that it probably won't happen for some time, right? Is ESL have been here from the beginning, well, almost the beginning. right? We have to go back. There's a couple before that you could cite. But ESL have basically been here from the beginning. So ESL running their shit. Counter-Strike gets a lot of hype. All these other cunts they're like, oh shit, fucking check out all this Counter-Strike nonsense that's going on here. And then they like, let's get involved in this shit. And then they come on in and they realize it's not as easy to stay a part of this for as long as they want. And then what happens is they're like, fuck. Well, we spent more money than we thought we should. And we're not going to make any money if we go forward, so we're going to fuck off. So what's going to happen is CSGO is going to continue until it's done. And then when CSGO continues, ESL, like they were pretty much at the end of 1.6 days, will be one of the only tournament organizers running Counter-Strike. And that's in case we get like some kind of exclusive league or some shit before then. This is the only way this whole thing gets around. If we say open circuit, then it's all going to get closed down. ESL will be the only ones running it. They'll keep it at whatever level the bar was set at. A new version of Counter-Strike is going to come out. It's going to be called Counter-Strike fucking Universe. I don't know. Then what's going to happen is ESL are going to do their shit. They're going to keep it at the same level. Then these other cunts are going to walk on in again. They're going to, oh, fuck, look at this Counter-Strike thing. It looks pretty good. And they're going to push ESL. And then ESL are going to have to raise their prize money. They have to find more money. They have to do all these things. And the same thing will happen. The thing will constantly go like that until somebody actually comes on in and creates a circuit where you have a shitload of money. That's just the way this thing is going to go, right? Like, the reason that these prize monies, like I see players, I saw like MSL make a tweet, it's probably like a year ago now, about prize money. I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? You've made more money in 3 years than what the majority of the world probably make in the entirety of their lives. It's just like, anyway, we're getting derailed because we're still on the opening topics and it's fucking 10 to 9 already. Let's keep moving. What did the community decide about Cloud9? Were they in or were they out, Lucas? Okay, well, there's 60%. They're right, because Cloud9 fans, they're my new favorite fans. So let's keep moving. We're gonna go
like a new clip.
We're gonna go on to how good are Liquid, and this is one that I think could be a relatively quick topic. So let's go. Let's start with you, Halvor, and then we'll move to Striker, and then we'll get towards me and Jacob towards the end of this piece.
So are we just? Well, I mean, I guess we have to discuss their ceiling because if we just talk about how good they are, they're the best team in the world.
How good
that's
can
just
they be?
Full stop.
That's about as good as they are. Yeah.
How much better do you get from being the best in the world? Like,
maybe,
well,
I guess maybe the best in the known universe.
Yeah,
they still have ways to go before they reach Astralis' level of 2018.
Yeah, no, exactly. So like the competition is not now they're not fighting for the current rankings or something. Now they're fighting for legacy.
Yep.
So then it doesn't become a question of how good they are in that sense. It becomes how good they can be. And I think with the makeup of teams right now compared to what we had last year, I think they stand a pretty good chance of becoming or having potentially the most dominant, one of the most dominant seasons in Counter-Strike history. I think Astralis is obviously going to be extremely hard to topple, just given the 2018 season they had. But I also think Liquid kind of hit their stride at the perfect time in the sense that Astralis, opted to do what they did in terms of taking a bit of a hiatus from tournaments. I think there's also a lot more nitty-gritty, a lot more teams that have upped their level, but not necessarily up to the echelon of Liquid, that was always the issue with I guess the entirety of 2018. Nobody was even remotely close to Astralis for the better part of it. You had the one-offs like FaZe, at Sydney, that kind of a thing, and just off the foundation of a team that they had at the time, that's not going to last over the course of the year. So for Liquid right now, they stand to potentially have the second best, being the second best team of all time, just as the makeup looks right now.
So do you feel, Striker, that they're able to defend like this for a while, or do you think this is something that could come in under fire pretty quickly?
I'm honestly not sure, because at this point, obviously Astralis are not at their best. They're probably not even the second best team. Well, not probably. I think they just aren't the second best team in the world anymore. Not after the last 4 events that they played. So sure, Astralis are a little bit on a downward spiral, but at the same time, Vitality is coming up. At the same time, ENCE is coming up. Navi could
Vitality.
potentially,
Are ENCE still coming up though?
Vitality. Huh?
Are ENCE still moving
well,
on
sure.
up?
Like at this point, like right after Cologne, I guess there's an argument to be made against them. But
they
still,
had
like
one bad showing, right?
Yeah, exactly. They've still had a really good record over the course of 2019 outside of this result. So I think it's still a little bit too early to say that they've fallen outside of the elite or whatever. After they basically lost the best of 3 to Vitality and a best of 1 to, I forgot, Heroic, or did they? No, I think it was Heroic actually. It was Heroic.
It was Heroic in the opening round, right? And Vitality lost.
And then
to
Vitality in the
Dust
best
2.
of 3, who are kind of their counter. as we've seen in the past couple of months. So to take that result as them falling out of the elite or anything, I think that's a little bit far-fetched at this point. But generally, sure, we have, I guess, a few more teams that maybe Astralis had up against them at the time, because sure, they had Navi and Liquid over the course of the entire year, basically, but then the gap from those top 3 teams down lower was pretty big, I think, over the course of the entire year. Sure, at times, some of the other teams were somewhere up there as well, but for most of the year, we had those 3 teams being at the top, right? This time, we might actually have maybe like 5 competing for a potential number 1 spot. So maybe they will have a bit of a harder time than Astralis did potentially. But at the same time, I don't think they are at that same level as Astralis are. So I think they are going to be easier to be taken down just because of the playstyle not being as oppressive as Astralis was, basically.
Yep.
Was to counter at least. So I think they're going to be easier to take down, but at the same time, skill-wise, they're just so high at this point that it's just going to be hard to bring them down just based on like outstratting them, etc. It's just going to have to take really good individuals coming together as well.
Yeah, or them having a really off day as a team, right? That could be another option for that one there. But I agree with a lot of the sentiments being echoed here. Jacob, in terms of this Liquid roster as it is right now and what they've achieved, would you put them within the top 5 CSGO teams of all time? And if you say yes, why? And if you say no, why? What's your rationale?
I guess with the results they've had, you had to put them in top 5 somewhere. I haven't really thought it through or looked through the lineups we've had. Obviously, we
can probably throw some out, right?
Like
so let's say
Astralis. Yeah, Astralis obviously. Astralis is obviously number 1. Nobody comes close. Then you have Fnatic. As you said, you have
could we
NVS.
compare them to maybe like an SK at this point? Maybe not SK because they had 2 majors in 2016, sure. So that's maybe a little bit further at this point. But SK of 2017. Rather, maybe not 2016, but could we compare them to like a 2017 SK who won maybe like 4 or 5 tournaments in the span of a half a year?
Sure, you could. I think you'd have to put some more thought into it, before you put them down on a ranking, especially because it's a very it's one of those topics, that if you say that the 4th best team ever, people will always argue that they're the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, whatever.
Let's do it like this. Hold up. Let's make sure this is clear for everybody, so that we're all on the same page. At least that when you can put the opinion out, you can already have set some clear parameters. So, from one perspective, like if we're going to say, let's do this one first, and then we'll do the less loaded one after. This Liquid roster, do you think they would have beaten NIP of their era at the time? Like if they jumped on a server today, do you think they would beat them? Like this, that is the reason it's unfair. Yeah, this is an unfair comparison. Sure. It is, but this is my point to the viewer. All right, let's keep going up the. Do you think it would beat the Fnatic and their when they were the best? Okay. What about SK when they were at their absolute best?
I think that's debatable.
That's doubt,
I think that's debatable.
SK at their absolute best is debatable.
I think so.
All right, why do we think this?
I'd say
because at the time they had basically 3 of the maybe 5 or 6 best players in the world. Like they would have matched them up skill wise, I think.
Okay, so you think like when everything was going, it would be close. Do you
I think Fallen also was ahead of the curve in terms of like mid rounds as well. So I think with that in mind, sure, like at this point, Liquid know more than SK did maybe 2 years ago. The game has moved on a little bit, but I think they would have. That's a little bit more debatable as to which team would win in that case.
I think the biggest thing comes in there is what map pool are we playing? Is Cobblestone in there?
That's true.
Well, I guess that's another thing, right?
If we're taking out Cobblestone, I have Liquid all day.
Yeah,
this is an unfair comparison, right? Like this is
it's just hard to compare it that way.
But that was kind of the point of this, right? Is to show people that comparing eras, you have to take all like teams, right? Not even eras. You could debate that for Liquid at the moment, but the point here is it's like you're trying to look at something when it's been in different periods of time. There was obviously different things going on. There was more known or less known or this or that. So comparing them like that is unfair. We have to compare them on is the merit of the time. You actually have to take in the context of the situation. That's why everybody's like top 5 would probably vary. So if we just looked at Liquid now, and I'll direct this one back towards you, Jacob. If you looked at this Liquid roster as with those new parameters, would you put them in the top 5? Like, would you put them in the top 5 of things that they've achieved and stuff that they deserve to be there based off what they've done thus far? Or do you think there's still more time until we can start putting them in that conversation?
I mean, the one problem is obviously they haven't won a major, right? There's so many teams who have won a major, and that adds to the prodigy. I think Liquid, with the results they've had and with the given the Intel Grand Slam and how much that means, yes, I would say that they're up there. I would definitely put them in top 5 of all best teams all time. How highly do you rate Intel Grand Slam, especially considering that Astralis decided not to this second season for whatever reason? There's so many, as you said, so many different factors that plays into that to make that comparison and to make that judgment. To me, the interesting thing when talking about Liquid is that it's not necessarily that I think Team Liquid are that much better than they were last year. Like when you look at the lineups, when you look at how they're playing some sort of the same Counter-Strike. I know Adrian has come in. I know ZywOo has added some more depth to the lineup. Comparing him to a player like Taku, it's two different types. So ZywOo is definitely adding some more space to some of the other players and doing some of the dirty work in that sense. But if Liquid of 2018 played Liquid of 2019, I think that would be an incredible close game. I think it could go all 5 maps in a best of 5. So, comparing Liquid today, obviously they've gotten better, but they just got confidence in the finals, right? Last year they're also getting to the finals all the time. They're always beating the teams they were supposed to beat, just like they do today. They also struggled sometimes, losing a best of 1 here, losing a best of 1 there. They were close in Monday PA, losing a best of 3 against Hellraisers. That could have gone real bad for them. They would have won the Inter Grand Slam then at Cologne. So it's not like they're dominating right now, and I don't think Liquid per 2019 is a much better team than the Liquid version of 2018. I just think they got over the hurdle of winning the finals, and also Astralis dropped off. So in that sense, it's easier.
Okay, so Halvor, do you think if Liquid won the major, let's just say Berlin, for example, that would cement it as their era?
Yeah, I think that's fair. Again, it's hard to kind of quantify, how much do you need to win for it to be an era. I think it's just more about how, I guess, if you're beating out, you can have an off event here and there, right? You don't necessarily need to win the summit if you can go to the next event and then beat the ever-living crap out of Astralis, Na'Vi, and literally all your rivals, right? I think that has much more play in it than anything else. So if Liquid were to win a major, yeah, absolutely, it's the Liquid era.
I would put them, at this point, I would put them slightly up above the lineup of Fnatic that won those 6 tournaments in a row over in 2015 to 2016, in that span of, I don't know what it was, maybe 4 months or something. So I would put them somewhere right above them, just because Liquid have been consistent for a longer period of time with basically the same core, with 4 players out of the 5 at least, if you disregard S3.E23, who came in only this year. So at this point, I would maybe put them up somewhere above those and below the Fnatic of previously when they won the majors.
Yeah, I think I agree with that sentiment, right? Because they've been at the top now. I'm obviously not saying first, but they've been at the top of Counter-Strike for over a year at this point. If you consider all the finals that they made it to and the kind of results they're putting in, it's been consistent for them. The only thing, exactly like what Jacob said, the switch has gone off in their head, and obviously the help from Astralis taking a hiatus. Now, we don't know whether or not when they met, both of them at their prime, how it would have gone down, unless you think that the iBuy Power Masters was a proper event. But yeah, I think we worked this one out, guys.
Wouldn't you guys, just quickly to end it, wouldn't you guys agree though that if Liquid anno 2018 or Liquid with Taco on the lineup played Liquid today, that would be a relatively close game? It's not like they've elevated their gameplay that much, have they?
Well, you see, I think it's a bit of a difference. I think there's differences in just, Liquid as a team, I think, are just a little bit of an edge better. NAF is still incredibly consistent. Twitch has gotten better this year than from what he was last year. I think Stewie's found more of a home in Liquid than obviously, last year. But I guess that's kind of hard to quantify properly with the way he plays. But I think Nitro as well is a bit of a step up. I think everyone on the side of Liquid, just as an individual, has gotten just that little smidge better from 2018. And I think that can have a lot to say. The small margins can have pretty significant impact over the course of a Counter-Strike game. So I think, Liquid 2019 would, I think that would beat 2018 version of Liquid pretty, handedly is a bit of an exaggeration, but I think they would win, 8 to 9 out of 10 games versus the 18 version.
I agree, just because, like you say, all of them got just a little bit better. And plus, I think over Taco, ZywOo is individually a better player, has a bigger peak, and I think he is more consistent. And also, I feel like he fits a little bit better now that the Liquid have acclimated to that new playstyle with him and to kind of switch things around a little bit. So I do feel like, but if anything, we've seen from Astralis how much those little improvements can do, how little it takes for you to get over that edge of being somewhere within the elite and the best team in the world. It takes very small things to improve on. It's just the hardest things that you have to improve on to get that little bit of an edge over everybody else. It's just like such a small difference that makes a lot of difference in the end.
I think that it would be competitive in terms of a game, but I still think like this version is better. So we'll wrap this one up and we'll move on to who is potentially better out of this next one. And we're going to be talking about ZywOo versus Simple. Now, this one for me, I didn't write the list, ladies and gentlemen. I just read it out. I'm not even remotely ready to have a discussion about this. We can have the discussion. We are going to have the discussion. My input is merely going to be facilitating the conversation because I think it's a little bit too early to start having this conversation. But I know that Jacob, you have a pretty pretty strong opinion on how good you think ZywOo can be. So we'll start it off with you this time around.
To me, it depends on how you set the conversation right. Because when we talk about Liquid, when we talk about Astralis, which one is the number one team in the world right now? Even at Cologne, there were some teams, some players saying that Astralis were technically still the best team in the world. Even though I think the majority of us agreed that Liquid were the better team. But that's just by the past 3, 4, 5 months, right? Because if we go back 7 or 8 months, we would all agree that Astralis is the better team, if we judge all those months. Potentially, you could argue that Liquid are the better team because they were consistently second best when Astralis was at the top, but Astralis now are not even to be judged the second best. So in that way, you can argue that. But the past 3 or 4 months, I don't think you can argue. I don't think you can neglect the fact that ZywOo has played on Simple level and even above. Potentially, because we haven't seen Simple play. Just like we don't give Astralis credit for missing out on tournaments, because it's not ZywOo's fault that Simple decided not to qualify for Pro League. It's not ZywOo's fault that Simple and Navi decided to go through roster changes and thereby not playing as many tournaments. ZywOo has played a ton of tournaments, he's played a ton of events, and he has been performing like Simple in every single one of those. So we can't really say whatever Simple would have done the same thing because he wasn't there. Just like when we talk about Astralis and Liquid in terms of would Astralis actually have stopped Liquid at one of those tournaments they decided not to attend. So to me, judged by the past 3 or 4 months, yes, ZywOo is the best player in the world right now. Do I personally believe that Simple is not going to be better than ZywOo when he gets back into shape and when Navi starts to attend a lot of tournaments? No, I'd say that Simple probably is my favorite candidate for being the best player in the world. But the race and the conversation and the comparison right now, to me, is very close.
So you've just broken it down into all-time versus the current period, and I think there was a 2-month hiatus from Simple actually playing tournaments, right? So part of that could be looked at where Simple was just not seen while ZywOo was playing and winning all those. Halvor, where are you at this? And just latching onto what Jacob just brought up.
Yeah, no, I'll put it, or my opinion is simply as this, that obviously Simple has had the, misfortune of not being able to qualify for all the final playoffs and everything like that, which is why, recency bias might tell you that ZywOo is the best player in the world as it stands right now. But I don't think that's fair because you have to look at the kind of competitions that ZywOo has been playing as well. I mean, yes, he's been attending tournaments. Yes, it's his rookie year. And I mean, he can only play the opponents ahead of him, right? Or in front of him. But I mean, Summit is a bit of a caveat. Like, you put an asterisk to that event just because of how that works out entirely. I mean, I think everyone there, out of all the teams, they were kind of in acceptance or agreement that Vitality by far had prepped the most for that specific event because that's where they started their kind of rodeo journey of a bunch of tournaments. Then they go into ECS. Don't think anyone in the world can, with a straight face say that ECS had the best teams available to them. So again, a bit of a field day for a player like ZywOo to go at it. Whenever Simple has been playing officials for, the better part of the year and a half, it's always been against the very best in the world, just full stop. And he's been able to deliver so consistently for consistently.
While you're talking, I'm just gonna ask Lucas to bring up the top 10 ranking filter with those stats that he was showing. I'm not sure if you can do it in the comparison, but you can do it. Look, I'm just gonna post it here. I'm gonna counter what you just said because, in a sense, I can agree with
the top 5 thing.
No, well, yeah, top 10. I'll put top 10 because I feel like top 5 is gonna be a little too limiting because not that many matches have happened between the top 5 teams this year. Not yet, anyway. Maybe they have a fair amount. By the way, ZywOo was at 1.43 against top 5 teams, while Vitality was top 5 as well, which has to be taken into consideration. Has to be both teams.
Then I will say that it depends. Again, I think tournaments come into it and like what kind of shape you run into the teams. And again, this is not the fault of ZywOo. Like he can't control if he's going up against, let's say, Astralis, playing the best Counter-Strike ever, or if it's the slumping Astralis, or if it's a slumping Navi, or whatever. That's not something he can control. He can only shoot at the heads that he goes onto the server with. So I'm not holding anything like that against him, but I think what Simple's been doing pretty much, versus the absolute best for time again, with all the turmoil as well that's been going on with that Navi team is more impressive. But I think it's a longevity thing that edges it for Simple for me. But I think in terms of Prodigy status, I'm way more excited about seeing ZywOo play than I am about seeing Simple play.
I think ZywOo's rise is much quicker as well, like to this point.
Yeah, it was very
like
gradual with Simple, right? Like
that we had the early days
and all that stuff.
Yeah. So Striker, you brought up the stats. So what's your take on this with the stats in mind?
At this point, with where ZywOo has taken Vitality, basically, this is how I'm going to take it, right? ZywOo has taken Vitality to 2 titles plus 1 second place, basically, where he carried the shit out of them, by the way. Like, he was so far ahead of every one of his teammates in Cologne, and obviously he was the MVP for it in the end. He carried them to that second place, and he carried them to those 2 wins. I'm not saying that Vitality are about ZywOo. I'm not going to go on that train, because I don't think that's true. We've seen, like, several of their, well, basically all of their players have, like, really big maps alongside ZywOo, or even above him, like Alex recently. So I feel like that's a little bit too far-fetched to say, like, Vitality is all ZywOo. That's not true. Obviously, he's the one to take them over the edge in a lot of these series. He's such a, like, big match, big pressure player. Like, he doesn't even seem to be affected by those things at all, like how most people are. And that kind of ties into Simple as well, because he's basically the same way. He tends to, like, go for crazy plays when Navi are under pressure. But you know what? I'm gonna put ZywOo ahead just because of the fact that he currently has 3 MVPs, while Simple has yet to get 1 this year. And so yeah, back to where ZywOo has taken Vitality compared to where Simple has taken Navi, which isn't that far at this point in 2019.
I think the semi-final versus Astralis is probably the benchmark that would be a good thing for people to look at if they will look at stats. Now, that series, for me, I looked at it and I thought, oh, this isn't just the ZywOo show, right? And the narrative for me begins, it's a team effort. But what it is ZywOo still being the highest rated player in every single map they played. But everybody else just contributing for them to beat the greatest Counter-Strike team of all time, who admittedly are not playing their best Counter-Strike of all time, but they still have that status, right? If you look at the stat lines there, like, there's the Overpass game they played. ZywOo had 20 kills. MBK had 23. Sorry, right? It had higher ADR, but ZywOo is still the highest rated player because he's contributing in all these other facets. I think Peter pointed it out on their Inferno game. It didn't feel like he was getting like a crazy amount of kills, but he was getting like a crazy amount of flash assists, right? I think that's the game we were talking about.
I think he was. I think you're right.
He was contributing a lot there, but still, because that game ended up going into overtime, he ended up with 30 kills, the most on his team. And then RPK had 24, Alex had 28, Apex had 28, and then MBK was down the bottom with only 16. But obviously, everybody else contributed in higher stats. It wasn't just the Simple show. So my point here is that even when it looks like ZywOo is not having a ZywOo game, he still is having a ZywOo game. Everyone else is actually just playing better. I said I was going to stay out of this one, so I'm not going to give an opinion. Jacob, now that we've kind of tied the conversation back on through, do you have anything, or are you happy with your position and we can keep this one rolling?
I think it's just very important to understand, that the argument you're discussing this from, the fact that if you are, basing this in the past 3 or 4 months, then I think ZywOo has been the best player in the world the past 3 or 4 months. It's not his fault that Simple hasn't been at as many tournaments and all that kind of stuff. And just to add on what you just said there with ZywOo, adding so much more, I feel like when you look at ZywOo as a player, if you have to find one thing that he does way more than Simple, it's his opening fragging, right? It's his aggressiveness in the way he plays. Simple is a little bit more laid back, waiting for his teammates to open the rounts for him, and then Simple is amazing in the clutches.
I don't think that's right.
You don't think that's right?
Simple has like famously been really high in opening kills and low deaths at the same time. He's been hovering like really far.
But if you look at you can actually look at the ranking field. I'm looking at it right now. If you look at the the ranking filler and put it to LAN the past 6 months against top 20 teams. ZywOo is again, he's involved in more opening duels than Simple.
But you're comparing ZywOo and Simple. What you should be comparing is Simple to his team and ZywOo to his team, not the two players to one another.
Sure, you could argue that.
That's the way that is the way you should compare it. Because if ZywOo just goes for more opening kills, right, out of choice, that's a ZywOo thing. That's not a Simple thing. One of the narratives that we have with Na'Vi at the moment is Na'Vi have opted to start playing more team-based Counter-Strike, which is true if you watch them play.
Sure.
It's not just Simple doing whatever he wants. Simple has actually had to change the way he approaches the game to have a more consistent team at the top level. That's maybe not necessarily something which Vitality have had to come to yet, but if their players start to drop off and the innovation coming in from the coach, the in-game leader, all the people watching the VODs and demos deciding how they want to play the game, if that stops and then it just becomes the ZywOo show, that's the same problem that Vitality are going to have to overcome, is their approach to the game and how they change that. Now, I think Simple may be a victim of the way... let me try again. Simple's stats may be a victim of the way that they've changed playing the game, because he's changed CT side positions. He's, instead of entering up banana in certain rounds, the guy throwing the flashbangs. Like, I've been watching a lot of Na'Vi stuff, especially when they were playing earlier in the year, quite in detail. And before, when it was Edward or Zeus throwing stuff for Simple, now it's Simple throwing stuff for them. Obviously, Edward's not there anymore. So I think that if you compare Simple's stats to the rest of the team, the next closest would probably be Electronic. I'd have to check that.
You're going to go with probably?
Yeah, but it makes sense as well, right? Because you bring in Boomage to the lineup and he's supposed to be the intro fragger now. He's supposed to create space for Simple, right? So it does make sense. All I'm saying is that and that's why it's such a dangerous subject to me and to everyone, because you talk about Simple, you talk about ZywOo, you obviously talk about the best player, in my understanding at least, to ever touch the game, CSGO, right? Simple, I don't think you can argue that he's been the most consistent and the best player for a long, long time. And with those scenes, with those scenarios, with those years he's had, and with the games we've seen him play, with the importance of that, all the emotions that we build up, that's going to affect how we judge Simple. I felt, that affected you a little bit, Halvor, in the way you tried to narrow down Simple, right? Well, that's potentially normally, and you can answer after, right? It's just, when you look at the stats and when you look at the teams, when you look at the tournaments, I can't help to be upset when I see teams, or when I see guys saying that now obviously Liquid are the best team in the world. It's not their fault that Astralis didn't attend those tournaments and they blah 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 blah. Well, neither is it ZywOo's fault that Simple hasn't been at as many tournaments. The tournaments we've seen for the past 3 or 4 months, ZywOo has in every single one of them been absolutely insane. And yes, Simple could potentially and probably would have done the same thing. Problem for him, he wasn't there. So based as of right now, yes, I would say ZywOo is the best player in the world, but I still think that Simple is a better player, and he's a more mature player to some of the stuff that you just said, Chad, right? That he had to change his playstyle, he had to mature as a player, and he had to do all that for his team. That's something ZywOo will have to do in the future of his career. But as of right now, sure, ZywOo is the best player playing the game.
I mean, depending on what kind of parameters you put on it, right? That's where you need some time to take over the mantle as the best team in the world, or the best player in the world, or best coach, best cheerleader, whatever it is, right? You need time for that to manifest itself, and I don't think that's really the case. ZywOo just hasn't had enough time for that to be, I guess, too legitimate of a conversation. While he definitely has the trajectory of it, and the potential to be the absolute best player in the world, I think it's just a little bit too early. And I will say, I don't when it comes to having I guess a bias towards Simple and the fact that you've come to love his highlights or the crazy plays that he makes or something. I'll just put this out that I, for the longest time, had not too much faith in Simple as a player, because if you go way back to the early days of his Na'Vi venture, he was pretty much the opposite of an impact player in that sense. He would be the kind of guy who, I guess, more equivalent to what James is for Avangard.
I was waiting for you to mention James because of your famous hate towards him.
It's not even hate; it's justified. Jesus Christ, that guy puts his team in so many awkward situations because he lives his off.
I love.
To be fair, he does win them a lot of rounds as well. But the thing is, for me, I kind of lost track with that one. But no, I think Simple today is much more of an impact player than what he was in the past. And I was not a big fan of who Simple was necessarily, in his early stages of his career. So I didn't really see him as becoming the best player in the world, with the way he was. So I don't think it's any sort of Simple bias from my end with that. I mean, if you want to go back to the days where he played in 8 Gaming, I thought, Prizrak was the best player in that team. Like that's how little faith I had in him. But he's changed, and he's learned to apply his skill in a much more impactful and better way for his team over the course of the years. And I think that's been pretty evident. And I think that's why he's really justified to still reign supreme as the best Counter-Strike player in the world for the time being.
Agree. I mean, I think he's gonna end in top 1, at the end of the year. No doubt about that, because Simple is going to play a lot of tournaments now. I'm just saying, that the past 3 months to me, ZywOo's
yeah, but to me that's a bit of a cheap competition in that sense, simply because Simple hasn't played that much, right? So, and again, not the fault of ZywOo at all. I think we more or less agree on it. It's just like a different kind of view perspective on it.
I think greatest of all time in any discipline, or even if we were to say greatest at the moment, isn't as easy to move around as a mantle of potentially best team, and we're still struggling to do that with some people. Still struggling to do that with Liquid. I think that Simple, we have seen him over the last 4 or 5 years. Every time he goes into the server, he's had very few occasions that I can think of at the top of my head where he didn't perform to the Simple level. ZywOo needs to show me, from my opinion, to change, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not that conceited. But he needs to show me, to sway my opinion, consistency over a longer period of time. Now, whether or not he can be a better individual player for Simple, the jury is still out. We will not know, because we need to see it over a longer period of time. It's the same thing with like the era discussion of teams. But right now, I don't think I am converted enough to put ZywOo, like I got Simple on the top. Simple is like actually God, like when you see him depicted with the clouds and stuff. Simple is on the top of the clouds looking down on everybody. ZywOo's up there. He's like close to the clouds, but he's not all the way there yet. I just need a longer period of time with that one. But unless anyone has anything extremely important to say, I got a tweet that I want Lucas to bring up. Everyone cool?
Bring it.
All right, let's put this tweet up. I'm going to read it out. So this reads, I don't even know what news source this is. Someone just put it in the chat.
I didn't know you spoke Portuguese.
Yeah, but I translated it. The power of Google, ladies and gentlemen. So it says Star Ladder. Now, I'm reading this off of Google Translator. This may be wrong. Starladder clarified the player replacement rule. If coldzera decides to leave, Zeus cannot play the Starladder Berlin Major. This replacement does not fit into the emergency case provided in the rule. Then it goes on and there's an article. You can read the article if you want. But personally, I'm the type of guy that just reads headlines and jumps to conclusions.
Such a millennial.
If I'm MIBR, I'm not going to the Major. That's what I'd do. I'd just not go. And
sorry, what?
Like, if I got told by Starladder that if coldzera doesn't want to play, I can't use Zeus, I would just not go. Because what are you going to do? Play with 4? If coldzera doesn't want to go, he doesn't have to go. You can't physically force him to go. So Starladder are telling, if I'm reading this right, Starladder are telling MIBR that they have to play with coldzera. What the fuck's going on?
What the fuck's going on? Contractually force him to play?
But if I'm no, how can they contractually force?
Well, the thing is, like, I don't think organizers actually have contracts with players at this.
No, not Starladder. I mean, thinking MIBR.
Oh,
I don't think they could force anyone to do anything. Right? I mean, what are they going to do?
You can't necessarily.
He is committed
put him
to
in a
the
harness
team, so...
and then put him on a plane. But like, obviously, it's going to have repercussions if he just decides to sit in a corner and be like, "I'm not going to the airport."
Yeah, for sure.
Pretty sure most player contracts are worded in the way that a player has to attend, whatever events the organization puts him in to attend. So that would be a breach of contract and probably,
pretty hefty fines.
But imagine this. Imagine that, let's just say, we're going to get to this is our next topic anyway. Imagine if FaZe Clan front up the money that MIBR have. This is business. If FaZe roll on in and they knock on the door, they go, "Hey, a new Immortals guy that replaced Noah Winston. Hey, man, here's the check. coldzera's contract says his buyout is," I'm going to throw out a ridiculous figure, ladies and gentlemen, because I don't know what it is.
$300 million.
So let's say that his buyout is $300 million. It's probably not, but let's say that it is, and that FaZe roll on in with a wad of cash that somehow represented $300 million. What would MIBR do? What could they do?
Sell.
No,
I mean,
in this case, I think if that happens, Starladder would actually allow it. Because of what we're seeing now with Lazarus, for example, what happened to them, because they had to provide that TenZ was transferred to Cloud9 and he's under contract with Cloud9, and the same thing happened. What's the other team that I'm thinking about?
Luminosity?
Must be Luminosity, right? Yeah, must be Luminosity with Lucas. Or what's well in this case,
Phelps,
well now
Lucas, yeah,
Phelps,
that's right.
but I guess we're not entirely sure. No, yeah, we are. Never mind. Whatever. But look at those scenarios, and obviously Valve or Starletter or whoever makes the decision have allowed those teams to use at least their coach, if not a new player. In the case of Luminosity, because they couldn't have known that they would play the minor because they came in as a replacement for Lazarus.
I've got the answer anyway. You ready?
Huh?
I've
There
got
we
the
go.
answer. It's coming up. Lucas is going to bring it up right now. I assume I gave it to him really quick, so let's see how quick he is. Here it comes. He's umming. He's
there we go.
ahhing.
Fake news, basically.
He's clicking. He's making noises. He's loading it. It's coming, ladies and gentlemen. Here it is. This is Panda, who works for Starladder as I would assume, the head of their league operations, aka admin, aka referee. Starladder never committed and never committed.
Commented.
Oh, I can't read, guys. I need glasses. Never commented and denied all the attempts to talk on the MIBR situation, since we never got a request from MIBR to consider the rumors as a real problem.
But how ridiculous is this situation? Let's say it were true, right? Which it potentially could be. Can someone with a rational mind explain to me why the roster rules that we use for the Katowice major has somewhat changed back to what
Strike
we're
is
using
the
now?
best of this. Strike.
Yeah.
This is
How about
just
it?
straight up bullshit, right? It's just counterproductive. It's not doing anything good for anyone.
It's created just a whole lot of mess in this whole situation. But basically, like what I think some of these rules have been, or why I think some of these rules have been introduced, and why. Well, Panda has
Sorry, before we
talked about.
continue, but isn't like we changed some rules for Katowice and then we just reverted it all back to the old shit that didn't work now? Or did they actually actively change
Well,
something from?
I think they actively changed it for two reasons. One being the fact that they wanted to disallow teams from using that loophole that Cloud9 used. Basically, that's one of the reasons, which obviously makes sense. Like we wanted that to be out of the question for anybody, because that's just ridiculous for you to be able to use only 2 out of the 5 players that were at the previous majors. That obviously I think we can all agree on. The problem is the other reason why some of these rules have been introduced is exactly to prevent what is happening now, ironically, which is for big orgs to poach some of these minor teams, which obviously happened in the form of Cloud9 taking on TENS, who was supposed to play the minor and now he can't, and Lazarus have been disqualified because FNS also for some reason isn't attending or didn't want to or whatever is the minor with Lazarus. So Lazarus were missing 2 players. They were only allowed to change 1, and now so they only had 4 players basically for the minor. So they had to drop out. Hence, Luminosity replaced them. So obviously, like some of these rules, or the reason why some of these rules were introduced, is not even there. That clearly it's not working as intended.
Okay, so I think we're all on the same page that the rules need to be tweaked, and this situation, I guess, can lead us into the next point of conversation, which will be about the struggling teams at the moment, MIBR being one of them, with this whole Cold Zero situation that many of you may have missed. FaZe Clan obviously come into the conversation here because of how the rumors are. Overdrive, for those of you who aren't aware, a prominent figure within the Russian Counter-Strike scene, has heard some things, and for you guys who don't get it, the players talk to each other. So like, maybe at the after party in passing, maybe somebody from MIBR or FaZe said something to fucking somebody from Na'Vi. And then somebody from Na'Vi said something to Overdrive, or someone in Na'Vi said something to management. And anyway, I'm just making things up. That could be possible. It couldn't be possible. But those 2 teams are definitely struggling at the moment and not where they'd want to be. What other names we got that we could probably throw into this? Big, at a lesser extent, we could throw into this. And other teams seem like they're on the up at the moment. Fnatic and NIP, I think, are a separate discussion. Maybe we'll save that one for the tail end of this. We can talk about the whole situation with Plopsky and stuff. But let's start with FaZe. Okay, we're gonna bring out the yay or nay buttons again if you guys still have them. I don't know if you do.
Got them prepped and ready.
All right. So this one here. Do you think? Now, let me make sure I phrase this one correctly. Do you think that FaZe in their current iteration should stay together? Yay or nay? Here we go. Here it comes. Have or no? I've hit no. Striker thinking hard.
I
It's just
also
really,
know.
yeah.
Okay, so we've all gone with nay. So Striker, you were thinking the longest, which means that you're the closest to being on the fence. Why do you think?
I was only on the fence because I can't think of well, now with Cold Zero being available, maybe there is a solution, but at the same time, you would still have the problem of the in-game leader, because assuming Cold Zero comes in, obviously we don't know if that's going to happen. It's just At this point, we have no idea if that's even on the table or anything. I'm just theorizing here. But if that was going to be the case, it would probably be as a replacement for Neo. I don't think we expect him to stay on the lineup, basically, especially after Cologne, where he had like one of his worst tournaments to date, even after like all those years of, well, not years, but at least his late months in Virtus Pro, where he was pretty awful towards the end. So we, assuming Neo is the one going out and Code0 coming in, well, we have the problem that we were in with the old phase, which is they don't really have a real in-game leader. So yeah, I just don't see an out at this point. Maybe I will at the major, which is why I said nay at from the get-go.
So let's do this before someone else talks. Let's do this. Do we think if FaZe added Cold0 in place of Neo, and we assume that Nico would go back to in-game leading, do we think they would be better than they are now? Yay or nay? Halvor straight in with a yes again. Quick on the buzzers. Oh, we're unanimous again. So Halvor, as the quickest, why do you think that they would be better than they are now?
It's a two-part answer, I guess. One, because Cold0 is just that much better as an individual from Neo, so that alone is going to carry you through to a lot more success than what little strategic base they have to work off of right now. Just that easy. And the second part is, I think we might be reaching a point, which might be to much of the chagrin of Yanko, that, I mean, if they're even considering this kind of a roster move, maybe they're just going back to their roots. Maybe they're just going balls out. We've got five of the greatest. Yeah. We got the five greatest. Five of the greatest individuals. In Counter-Strike. Sure, it's not going to lead to a lot of consistency, but boy, are we going to be good when we hit our stride.
They're not even close anymore. That's the problem.
That's the thing. Like now you're judging a team that's been trying to really just redo their play style and change up everything that they've known, pretty much like what their foundation has been for such a long time, that obviously that's going to lead to lackluster individual performances. Yes, Olaf Meister is not going to be as dominant as he was in 2015. Guardian's not necessarily as consistent as he was, a couple of years ago, and Nico's not having the same kind of form. But do we think Nico's done as a top level player, or do we think he's had a bit of a lull because of all the turmoil that's been going on within the FaZe lineup? Same thing can be said for Rain. Like when you think about a player like Rain, for instance, who's very much a system player, right? Not necessarily that he can't work, as a standalone star necessarily. I don't think he lacks the skill set to do that. If you don't have some sort of consistency around you, it's going to be hard to perform. Whether that consistency is, through chaos, which sounds, I guess, counterintuitive, but the fact is that if everyone is on the same page as to what they want to do, which FaZe clearly aren't now, where they haven't fully understood how to do it properly, then they might be better off just going full on, balls to the walls with individual skill. And I think you're going to see an upswing in form from a lot of the individuals that have been lacking. I mean, if Nico gets to do whatever he wants, he's going to play better. If Rain can know his spot with it, within all the chaos, I think he's going to be able to do better than what he's currently been doing. Yeah.
All right. So with that in mind, here's another one. Get your buttons ready. Do you guys think, right? Because Halvor said that he thinks that they'd be better because they can play like more like as they used to, individual style, and dominate in that sense. But that's one take on it. Do you think that this FaZe roster are better sticking together or better disintegrating and going separate ways? Yay or nay? So disintegrating.
How do you mean that?
How many people are we losing here?
The whole team.
Exactly.
The entire team. The entire team. Do you think
just everybody's just going their separate ways?
Yeah. Do you think it's better if the team stays together and tries, or do you think it's better for the team to disintegrate and go? So actually, I need to define one question here, don't I? Do you think it's better if the team disintegrates and goes their own ways? Yay or nay?
Okay.
I'm not sure if I completely got the question in that sense.
I'll try it again. Hold up. We can have another vote. Do you think that this FaZe roster are better sticking together and continuing to try and plug in different players when they become available? Or do you think that they potentially have better options if they were all to go their separate ways and go back to their country? So the reason I ask this is because personally, I think that this is how this should run. Nico should go play for Crazy and take Yanko over there, and they can rock that shit. That's what I think they should do. I think Olaf should go back to Sweden, and then we could have an entire discussion about NIP, Fnatic, and making a decent Swedish roster again. Then what we could do is we could grab fucking Rain, take him up to that Nordvin team in fucking Norway. You can chop out a couple of the bad players, add Rain in, I'm sure there's a bunch of Rain once told me about some kid from Norway that was sick on the AW playing a shitload of FPL. I don't even know who his name is. That's the cunt.
Holzerk, yeah.
Fucking get that cunt in there. Then who we got left? Guardian can go and fucking play for a Russian team if he wants, or he could potentially go and try and make a team with Stiko. Maybe when, I don't know, Oscar gets fed up playing in Hellraisers, he can come too.
Chad, you completely lost your mind.
No.
All I'm saying is...
here's the thing. What you're suggesting is it better to play for FaZe, contend for potential tournament titles, which you know they can if they start getting together their individual performances, which I don't think is necessarily out of the question, or should they go back to joining Crazy that attends?
Let me explain myself. Let me explain myself.
I need to know that you haven't lost your mind completely.
These are all very valuable pieces of a current team that doesn't function. Right? They're all very, very valuable pieces, and if there were a team that worked, I would say just keep doing what you're doing. But your alternative, like the one that the community probably is thinking here, is let's continue to throw in these janky pieces and hope that the fucking puzzle goes together. Right now, it's like a bunch of fucking 3-year-olds who have 4 different puzzle sets and they're fucking mashing their face together, trying to work out how that puzzle goes together. This puzzle doesn't go together, right? It went together at one point, but it's been left out in the sun too long and all the pieces are fucking warped. Now, the reason it's important for these pieces to go back to their country, Sweden, they're not in a terrible position. Olaf was once the best Counter-Strike player in the entire world. Take that motherfucker back, reunite him with a couple of his homies like Crims, and let him wreck some cunts. Take Nico to Crazy. Crazy are playing fucking G2 right now. They're going to beat those cunts, and they're going to go to ESL 1 New York. They're going to win the qualifier. It's going to happen. Whatever. Get Nico there. Nico and Hunter in the same team. You're getting a pretty decent amount of fucking star power there, and build a proper team in the scene, right? Sure, he takes a chunk of hit, but all these players say they want to play with people at home. Guardian is the only one that I can't place. If I could get Frozen, I could get Stiko, I could get Oscar and Guardian, then we maybe have a team. Get Zero in there. There we go. We got a conversation. But that one I can't make happen.
Links about a local team happening. But,
yeah, make that shit happen. Get fucking Rain to go up to Norway. Get Croman going on the team. Get this Hellzerk kid on the team. Get another good player in there that I'm forgetting from. Oh, get Jacob off of Renegades. Get him in the fucking team. There's 4. There we go. Just need an in-game leader. Who am I forgetting?
Do you want to destroy because you don't want FaZe to play together?
You basically destroyed like 5 different teams.
All I'm saying is that these pieces could do very valuable things. It is wishful thinking.
I mean,
that's the whole point.
Obviously, they're going to be valuable for the other teams because they're going to lesser teams.
Yeah, there you go. It's valuable for the local scenes.
He's told me on the idea.
I mean, yeah, absolutely. I would love to have Rain. I would love to have Jacob. I would love for Element to just respawn in 2003 form and just
let's
go into Nordavin, and all of a sudden we can live a happy life where Norway wins, CPLs and stuff like that. That'd be great. But I don't think that's a reality you can actually, assume it's going to happen.
No, he's actually sold me on a part of this plan. Basically,
is it the local team?
No, the part of this plan that doesn't include Nico, because Nico should fucking be on a top 3 team in the world.
I'm not.
And I don't see
a lot of them
Crazy
should
getting
be on
there
top
anytime
5
soon.
teams.
Huh?
I think a lot of them should be on top 5.
I don't think
or top
anybody
10
else
teams.
currently is. Well, maybe
But
like
in form. Are you talking about their form at the moment?
Sure.
Yeah, but I think their form is based on their environment.
I'm not entirely sure that's
right?
true.
That's the problem with FaZe in this discussion. We're not talking about inform. FaZe have been shitting the bed for such a long time now. Rain hasn't been nowhere near his level for such a long time. Same goes on for Olofmeister. You could argue.
But you guys think adding an extra player in the slot of Neo is going to make them all play good Counter-Strike again?
No, but get the right fucking player instead of picking the wrong fucking player.
Okay, so that's the question then. So you think that there is hope for the team? That's what you guys think, right? You guys think that there's hope.
Definitely, if they decide to go the right route. I mean, it's been a mismanaged team for such a long time now, and the players haven't dealt with it well. And if anything, you'd like to see some of those players step it up when needed the most.
So this is
done that. Rain haven't done that.
This is the whole point of this conversation, right? At what point do we stop standing around in a circle and pointing the finger at the guy who's the newest, right? At what point do we stop doing that? I mean, because we're already there. So the question is, if you're not just replacing Neo, who are you replacing, right? Because if you guys are saying we literally keep the same 4,
I think it would take 2 changes.
Yeah, I think I mean, 2 changes.
I don't
look.
You said you gave us the option of the whole team sticks together, or like the whole core sticks together,
exactly.
or everybody takes.
I still think
apart.
everybody. I still think everybody goes their own ways, because I think that I don't think that international Counter-Strike teams will ever be consistent top 3 teams in the world. That doesn't mean that I don't think they can win events.
I don't agree with that at all.
Well, it hasn't been proven that can be the case other than a short window of time when FaZe were at the top, right? FaZe were at the top for what?
How many real European mix lineups have you actually had though? Basically FaZe and Mouse Sports that ever made it as far as to be at one point considered like an elite team, basically.
But that's my point.
Yeah, I think that's I think you're just making his case right now.
Sure, but then Hellraisers, sure, but they didn't even individually. They obviously didn't make an elite level team, even like piece by piece. Obviously, it was a team made up of new guys from scenes that didn't really work, and just put together under leadership of a veteran. That's not a team you expect to make it to the elite. While FaZe and Mousesports at least had the pieces that we knew were like elite level players, and that team could make up an elite level team. But obviously, that hasn't really happened that often. Like outside of maybe those 2 cases, those 2 teams.
I think what Chad is saying is pretty much on point. Like you can get a mixed nationality roster to be really, 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 really good for a couple of tournaments. Like that's where they peak. There's never going to be any consistency around it. I don't think we've seen that from any international team.
You would say that is down to communication.
I mean,
we had Mouse Sports being pretty consistent for a long time.
But not
they weren't the number one
best.
team.
Yeah.
But
sure,
they
weren't the number one
in the
team,
top 10, right?
But how many national teams are competing against Mouse Sports and FaZe?
That's what I'm saying. Like we haven't really had
2 teams against 20. Of course, there'll be more good
yeah,
teams
exactly.
in the 20. I mean,
no, but you guys are. But that's the wrong way to look at this situation.
Why?
Right?
Why?
Because what you're saying is we're just about to have the equality debate. Like, how are we even doing this? What you're saying is if we had more teams who are international rosters, then we, in theory, would have more competitive teams from international rosters. That as a sentiment is ridiculous. What I'm saying is teams who are of speaking one language and one culture, I guess Canada and America and Australia and New Zealand may be a little bit different or whatever, but having one team of one mind is going to be stronger than having one team of 5 different minds, or a mix of 3 or 4 different, or whatever the fuck it may be.
It's all about the leadership, dude. Like, if you think about it, the European teams that made it but didn't make it to number 1 consistently
were led by Carrigan.
Sure, but one of them was led by Carrigan, and that team actually made it to the top for like a decent amount of time. Sure, it was like a fairly brief period, but still, they were for like half of a year.
Sure, but
in like
they weren't
separate occasions, but still,
they were in a period of time when SK were the best team for the first half of the year. FaZe were the best team for maybe 5 months, and then SK beat them at the end of the year to say, hey, guess what, everything you just did, well, it doesn't really matter, people won't remember it.
Let me put it this way, if you took Glaive and let's say Sipnix out of Astralis, you put them in instead of Neo and let's say Olofmeister, you say that you don't think they would be the best or have the potential to be the best team in the world consistently?
No.
Consistently, no.
They sure would. I think Strikers is definitely onto something. It's about leadership. It's about understanding the mechanics of the team and facilitating. But sure, you're gonna have different cultural differences, but hell, man, even guys from Denmark, who are playing with each other, have those, different approaches to life and different approaches to all that. And Counter-Strike, I mean, Chad, you always speak English, right? In your teams, you've always been part of a native team, right? When I moved to Liquid, Striker, it was like one of the first, it was one of the first experiments with doing that, and that's something we've come so far along with. It's something we've involved so much. The Counter-Strike, I feel, is now more than ever an international sport. Like, communication can always be narrowed down, and there will always be your small hiccups.
It's an unfair comparison.
Okay.
The reason that's an unfair comparison is because you come from one of probably 6 countries in the world where maybe there's more. I have to think. One of the 5 or 6 countries in Europe that I would almost hazard a guess that 90+% of your population speak English, right? Sure. Like, if I had to hazard a guess, I would say Norway, Finland, Denmark, Sweden, and then one of those other fucking Nordic countries, Iceland or Greenland or whatever the fuck you come to call it. every motherfucker there and his dog probably speaks English.
That's not unfair. Why does that make it unfair?
That's an unfair comparison. Why? Because what we're talking about is FaZe and Mouse Sports and Hellraisers.
So you're saying so you're saying American teams, North American teams combined with European players don't work either?
I don't like them.
Let's say you put okay, let's give you one example. put fucking Zipex and Glaive instead of Nitro and whatever. S3.E23 into Liquid. Is that not the best team in the world consistently?
I don't think so.
Why not? Why not?
I genuinely think that the level that contributes to this on the tiny detail of communication and the fact of getting I think that we saw by having Taco in Liquid as a team, we already acknowledged earlier in the show by changing Taco with Stewie, who is a player not speaking English as a native language, made the team better, right? Do you think that changed at all because Stewie plays a different style of Counter-Strike than Taco, or do you think that the language barrier had something to do with it?
Just because of the playstyle and different.
So you genuinely think that the English level has nothing to do with it?
I'm not
I don't
any
think it
point
has,
of a game.
has anything to do with it past the first 6 months.
Yeah.
Once you get adjusted, I really doubt that it's going to be a big problem for you.
said
Alright, well,
once you get adjusted, what makes you say that they will get adjusted?
We can work this out. We can do this. We can have a bet right now. I will bet either of you two €1,000 at this moment right now that no international team made up of 3 or more different nationalities, now that has to include people who do not speak English as native language, because Australia, New Zealand, UK, etc.
So you're saying now you're not even accounting it cultural difference. It's just about communication.
I think that the culture between Australia, New Zealand, UK, America, and South Africa is all very similar. I don't think that we look at the world in too many different ways because we all grow up.
UK and Australia, sure, but the rest
and the same as no, like a lot of the people like from those countries are afforded the same kind of lifestyles, right? I genuinely think that is the case. But I would make a bet with either of you for €1,000 if you want. In the next 3 years, that we will not see an international team consistently the number 1 team for more than 6 months.
See, I would take that bet, but that bet is completely out of my hands. It's not up to me. If FaZe would buy,
okay,
no,
can
but
extend
the thing is, we might.
It's that obvious. Like if it's that obvious, like you guys are so
no, if somebody would make the right.
No, yeah, but exactly. But here's the thing. So you two are extremely convinced at the idea that this.
You're living in a perfect world.
People don't need to try it at this point outside of those 2 teams that we were talking about. Because, like, look at how Vitality got back to the top. They put together a French roster, right? And it actually worked for them. And, like, these other teams that just came up, they just improved as a unit. They didn't have to go into these multinational rosters because they actually found a 5 within their own country. They didn't have to take these risks and actually make it a top team in the world. Who else has tried outside of FaZe and Mouse Sports and Hellraisers on like a consistent basis to make it a European team?
That's the whole point. Why aren't more people trying then? If it's possible, why don't they do it?
Because they've had other options. Because it makes more sense, sure.
But that's the whole point.
That's the entire thing.
The point is, you're saying that no matter what happens,
much more motivation to stay together than risk it, right?
But that is a factor, right? What you guys have just brought up there is a factor as to why this hasn't happened yet, because they've had other options. So if
because they are doubting
them,
themselves, basically. That doesn't
but that's
really
the
make your
point.
case.
But what you said, no, that's not the point. What you said is that even if we could make our imaginary teams, even if we could pick Glaive and we could pick Sipnix and put them in whatever team we wanted to, you don't think they would be consistently the best team in the world?
Not right now, no. I think the best team in the world right now would still be Liquid.
That's the discussion, not whether it's realistic or not, because that's out of our hands, right?
No, but my point is, over the entirety of the future of Counter-Strike, and I said 3 years, I'll change the bet to 5 years, and we'll even go consistency of fucking, we'll go top 3. You don't even have to be the best team in the world. I'll go 5 years for 6 months, top 3 team.
I'm in. Like, that's fucking crazy from you.
Alright, so we're talking
consistent team.
A top 3 consistent team within the next 5 years, multinational, has to have a minimum of 3 nationalities or more to be considered. That's it. It's done. We've just closed the topic.
You know what?
We'll find out.
I'm gonna send you my PayPal, and you can just pay now, and then I'll pay you back. Later.
We'll keep tabs on this.
You're basically saying that somebody like Mouse Sports will not make it to a top 3
consistently for 6 months. That's what I'm saying. I'm genuinely saying that.
6 months? Mouse Sports have already done it, basically.
We just made the bet. Time will tell. All right. That's the situation right there.
You've already basically sure it's not within the 5 years. But if we made this bet 2 years ago, you would have already lost.
You know what I'm going to spend this 2,000 on? I'm going to spend this 2,000 on English lessons for people in Europe so they can try and join an international team. Anyway,
2 years ago.
We're going forward. Yeah.
The only reason he would have lost it is because he went nice with it and said top 3.
Yeah, exactly. And
but that's his fault. That's his own fault.
FaZe was a one-off.
It needs to be replicated, right?
FaZe weren't even the best team in the world for 6 months. They weren't. They weren't the best team in the world for 6 months.
They were definitely top 3
they were.
Months,
and I left you off the hook. I let you off the hook because that's how confident I am that
You know
no
what,
other
Striker?
team.
It's fine. It's fine. We
Now
get
look,
our money.
I'm going to
That's
get
how
my
confident I am.
1,000 euros in a
All right.
couple of years.
Here we go. So the next point that we're going to, we just did the FaZe clan thing and we didn't come with a solution. But now we can talk about MIBR. Lucas, did I send you that new tweet?
So many new tweets.
I'm going to get this fucking Twitch chat from all these cunts who are saying I'm wrong in 5 years' time from now, and all of you are getting put on. All of you are getting put on blast. I put JW, Natu, all those motherfuckers on blast. I retweeted their shit because they were wrong about the jump bind, and I'll be right about this in 5 years' time, you fucking cunts. Anyway, did I send you that tweet, Lucas? No, I didn't. This one here. That one there you're gonna have to translate. Anyway, this one here, we're going to move on to talk about MIBR, and this tweet came out from Taco. Now, obviously, you guys know about the woes, Coldzera, he's on the way out the door, if he can get out. I made a tweet, actually, saying that I think it's a power move from him, because if he wanted them to change the core, this is probably the only way that they could go about doing that. And this tweet from Taco is basically talking about the fact, I don't know the wording exactly. Can you translate it, Lucas? Can you just right-click and translate with Google Chrome? Oh, okay. Well, that kind of sucks.
Well, what is it supposed to mean?
Why won't it translate to me anymore? It was before. Hold up. Let me just whack it in my thing.
Just didn't put it in Google Translate, yeah.
Oh, wait. Here we go. To clarify, yes, MIBR as an excellent organization that is provided us with a psychologist who is referenced in, I guess, like top in the field. This is probably just translation, and who will start working with us before the major. So. Obviously, things could happen with that. Maybe they talk around and work out a way to make the team work. But the point of discussion right now is the Coldzera move. We'll bring out the buttons again, boys. Coldzera moving, or wanting to leave. Do you think that this is good? Let's try again. Do you think the core of MIBR, Coldzera or Fallen, needs a change for them to get better?
That should be easy, right?
Here we go. We're about to find out. 1, 2, 3, and Halvor.
I have to find my button.
Okay, so we all think it should be better. So, Striker, why do you think they need to make a change with the core to get better?
I think it should be fair and not Coldzera. But yeah, generally, I think it should be fair because
what are you thinking? Yeah.
Huh? Pat agrees. Oh yeah, okay, there we go. Yeah, they agree pretty hard actually. Just a couple of nays and a sea of yays. Anyway, I thought it's been a while that I've had this theory that it's fair who should go out of the core. At the same time, now that Phelps has gone, maybe that's not such a good idea because now they're kind of lacking the aggression that every team needs to be able to succeed. So maybe not at this point, and maybe they just need somebody completely other than Phelps or Fair. They just need to find somebody. Well, maybe Art or somebody like that, but that's maybe going a little bit too crazy. So somewhere halfway between those two, basically.
I said it before on a broadcast. I think it was the ECS finals or something. But I think Fallen should be considering seriously whatever. He's still interested in leading MIBR and whatever he still can. I mean, when you look towards the way he's run MIBR, he is the leader figure of that team. He has been the in-game leader for the vast majority of that lineup, and he hasn't done anything whatsoever with that team ever since they joined MIBR. At some point, you got to put some responsibilities on his shoulders and either figure out the right roster move or go himself. I mean, there are other players within the Brazilian region right now who could in-game lead and who could bring in some fresh energy to a core that is to my understanding dead. The fact that Coldzera goes out in public and does this and risk the entire major, not only on behalf of himself but also his team and MIBR, tells me exactly how much of a shit show MIBR is right now. So Fallen has lost control of his locker room, to put it in a sports reference, and he has to take responsibility. Whatever he does that by leaving himself or figuring out this shit, I don't care, but something needs to happen within him, and I'm looking towards Fallen right now.
I do agree that MIBR made a big questionable decision with bringing back the 2017 roster. I don't think anybody saw that as a great move. I don't think anybody saw them as just that going to make them is going to make this what's going to make them come back into the elite all of a sudden just because they're going to bring back a team that once worked. We know how that has worked with other teams, with other lineups such as the Swedes trying to go the same route basically, and it just failing completely. And I think everybody saw that happen, at least to some degree. Maybe not as much as this. I don't think we expected them to be completely out of the question for a spot in the elite, because they haven't been there for a good part of a year now, or maybe even a little bit more since they went the American route. But yeah, it's just the I agree with Pimp in that sense that the decision making hasn't been great, and I don't know if that's up to Fallen or anybody else, but it's definitely up to that core. So that needs to change in some way.
Can I ask a question? Because I feel like that's both the community, but also some of our, figures within the scene. Why is it people are so hesitant to call out Fallen for actually taking responsibility for what is not happening in MIBR right now? If an in-game leader on any other team hadn't done anything whatsoever, hadn't gotten any success, has not made one single right decision, nor has he played well himself either. Online
Sure.
he's been fine, but online he hasn't. At what point do we actually start to consider, despite him being such a great legend, I'm not, taking anything away from him. I'm a huge Fallen fan myself, but he's not performing and he's not doing anything for his team right now that makes him perform. I think it's fair to consider he should be the one who should be removed or figure out this shit show.
For me, I think people have definitely been speaking about it, but the reason that I guess the target hasn't been put on anyone's back, at least from my perspective from MIBR, is because they've always had a glimpse, like a roster change, or it's hit a period of time and then they've gone up against a team we consider a top team and they've taken a map or they've pushed them or they've made a final, like ECS last year. I think it was.
Against the Strauss you're talking about? Yeah, they beat them in the groups and then they lost in the final.
Yeah,
if I'm not mistaken.
And then this year, obviously the WSG thing was a nightmare, but before that with the major, the fact that they made top 8, right? They beat Renegades in the quarterfinal. The fact that they did that, I was like, oh, that's good enough. And then when they made the Phelps move, it obviously hasn't been good enough since that move. But in terms of what you're talking about, I think that Fallen, at least from my perspective of Fallen, still has the drive to play. I just think that when you get as big as what Fallen has gotten, I would say he has to be easily one of the most influential Counter-Strike players in the entire world. He runs his own business, all this kind of stuff. He's probably maybe... and let's make sure we talk about this all in a positive light, because you think about where these guys started, he's completely turned their lives around. They now, have done all this amazing stuff for themselves and their community. So these are all very positive things. But it must be very difficult from his perspective to run all these things and still focus on being one of the best Counter-Strike teams in the world. And I always bring this conversation up when we talk about teams. At what point are teams happy just to be a top 10 team in the world? Because they could probably maintain, hovering around the top 10 team in the world position if they just stuck with a similar roster to what they have now and just, keep grinding and whatever. Or do they want to make the changes and be the best team in the world again? Well, obviously coldzera
does for sure, yeah.
Exactly, right? That's why he's doing this situation. So if he really wants out, we're going to find out over the next couple of months.
That's the thing. Sorry to interrupt you, but I'm not sure whether this is public information or not, but the first time coldzera wanted to leave, which is more or less known by now, right? He wanted to go to Team Liquid, or at least he wanted to leave back in the days from MIBR. This is not the first time he does this. It's he's putting a lot of more pressure now, but he's been trying to leave that team before. I'm not sure whatever he said, or there were just rumors surrounding that, but I'm pretty sure I heard and I've spoken to a few people who said that was basically down to the fact that he didn't feel Fallen was putting in enough hours or enough commitment or whatever focus on the team of MIBR. He was the main reason that he was a little bit upset with, which comes to us as a surprise as to a lot of people, because from the outside, you look at those guys and they've been playing together for ages. They, as you said, Chad, they came from nowhere and made their way to be the best team in the world. And as you said, coldzera definitely wants to be one of those guys that he wants to strive for greatness. He wants to be the best in the world, but when we're talking about a team like MIBR, it's like having the same conversation when we're talking about Cloud9. We must assume that their goal is to be the best in the world, or at least somewhere up there. So if Fallen, Fur, or whoever the fuck is on that team is somewhat satisfied being a top 10 team in the world, then get them out of there straight away. And that's why I still don't understand why that's not being spoken more about, because if you have a guy who has the skill set coldzera has and has the drive coldzera has, then give him the tools he fucking needs in order to make a top team, because he doesn't have it right now.
I get that. That's more from a wanting to see them as the best team in the world, as opposed to maybe where they're at as a team, right? So let's say Fallen for Taco. I don't know if this is true. I'm just saying, if they were content with being a top 10 team in the world and MIBR were fine with keeping them and having a top 10 team in the world, and then coldzera going and doing a risk, trying to become one of the best players in the world again. But it's a difficult mountain to climb, and there's no clear path for him to do that, right? This phase one doesn't... We already discussed that just before. We said they'd be better than what they are now, but we didn't say they'd be the best team in the world, right? So it's almost just changing one roof over your head for another where you're going to find problems. This doesn't necessarily mean everything's going to be fixed. So I think that at this point we probably start putting them in the same discussion as what we would have had about NIP when they were just changing the same fifth, or there's other teams who have done similar, like I guess what FaZe have done over a shorter span of time, changing the fifth or having stand-ins, that kind of thing. This is probably what we're looking at when we look at MIBR now. It's like, okay, well, something has to change, and we're all establishing that it's from the core, but where are those shots going to be called from? Who's going to cut their mate that they've been there from the beginning with when they were kind of coming up this way? So I think that's why I think it's a power move from coldzera, because it's either going to force the organization to change whatever coldzera wants, or it's going to force the organization to realize there's something wrong in the team and that they need to make some drastic changes, even if coldzera leaves, right? There has to be a change of something. And with Lurpus there, you would think that he would be pretty on top of this, right? So it depends on who's really calling the shots on this whole thing.
Well, he's not even the general manager anymore of the team, so I don't think he has much to say about that team in general.
No, I think you're spot on though when you're saying that it is a power move from coldzera, but that's also, a sign of how desperate he is to either get out of there or get this to work, and how much of a show that MIBR lineup is right now. I think you're spot on though. It is a power move from coldzera, and it's going to be interesting to see how it turns out. It's just not, it's a shame, right, that it has to come to a point where a player has to stronghold or strong arm an entire organization and an entire team, potentially putting them at risk at not going to a major and then requalify for the next major, and by then losing tons of money, losing tons of like recognition, repetition, and all that kind of stuff. It's crazy that it's gotten to that point for coldzera, and it's somewhat sad, I feel.
By the way, just to throw out a question here, do we see any sort of changes to MIBR where it doesn't matter if you change out one or two out of the core from MIBR that actually takes them to be a team in contention for a top spot?
The problem is
elite team. Is that even a thing? Is that even a possibility within the Brazilian talent pool right now?
Well, the best players all just got locked up, right? Right, they've just been put in jail for 5 years. So
yeah, I mean, they said, in their official statement they did say that their buyouts were the same, didn't they? And now the contracts were just reflective of that.
Let's maybe talk about it in this kind of light. You would have to be stupid to think that MIBR didn't go up to Furia and say, I want this player, and Furia and R over it, and their contracts. I don't remember the whole contract situation. I didn't read it personally. I don't really care. But I would assume that there was probably something in there that Furia made it very difficult. If it was simple business, we already had this discussion. We said, what if FaZe walks into MIBRs and slaps down the 300 million fictitious price tag we just put on it? The same thing, MIBR have a shitload of money too. I'm sure they just walked into the Furia office and slapped their fucking blank checkbook on the table, and Furia went, we don't have a number for you right now. They probably gave some other spin on that. But there's a reason that these players haven't been bought. We already know that they were talking about it, and they say, oh no, but we always wanted this guy first. There has to have been occasions since that point where they've looked at Furia, especially considering the notoriety in recent times, where they've gone, let's go buy these players. And I'm going to assume that trigger of Pro League, of the idea that Phelps is on the way out and that one of their players could get poached, that right there is the trigger to go, here's some 5-year contract, boys. You like what you're doing now compared to what you're doing 2 years ago? Sign this, shine this motherfucking shit, and you're locked away. So let's just assume that Furia are locked away. You don't want anyone from Luminosity, really. Let's be honest.
Well, I mean, you just got Lucas from Luminosity, so I guess you're already stepping in the wrong puddle if you're MIBR, right? So are you already just doomed? Do you need to throw out Lucas as well?
What do you think about Henny there, Halvor? Let's say we added Henny in and Fallen went to what he did in the early days of Brazilian CSGO, where he was rifling and ZQK
was hopping? Yeah,
was
ZQK.
Do you think that's a possibility?
It might be a possibility. Do I think it's a good option? God, no.
So you wouldn't even entertain that idea? What would you change then? Assuming Cold's out and you had Fur, Fallen, Taco...
that's the thing, right? I don't see... I think that's why they're having a hard time breaking anything up. That's where there's so much reluctancy, because what's your fallback plan? Do you bring in anyone from Luminosity? Is that even interesting? I don't think that's a very enticing idea for anyone in MIBR. I mean, I think the best idea they've had that plenty of times. They've had plenty of opportunities to pick up any of those players, and they haven't necessarily improved from their Immortals days, right? So now you're just, going downwards even more so than
recycling talent, right? Yeah.
Basically, what MIBR did was right in the sense that they should have brought back somebody from their past, but they just chose the wrong person. They just should have brought back FNX.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that team hasn't been the same since FNX left. Doesn't matter. I mean, you can talk about how they won tournaments with Welps and whatnot. But yeah, obviously. But again, then you have to, swing your magic wand and just kind of hope that you bait him out of a life of, celebrity and Instagram fame and God knows what.
Bro,
the hell
have
he's
you
doing.
seen his
Have you seen his
girlfriend?
girlfriend?
There's
Dude,
no way
no,
that I'm
there's no
going
way
back
he's
to
leaving.
playing.
Obviously, like
I'm done.
Exactly, that's the thing, right? Like you don't. Where do you go if you're MIBR? You don't really have any options.
Hey.
Are you going to pick up like players from Santos? Are
Sure
you
you do.
Pick up
Sure
players
you
from
do.
Daytona?
You can't convince me that there's not one or two not one or two players within the Brazilian scene of all those grassroots players that plays Counter Strike that aren't worth looking into or aren't worth like.
I mean, you had the VSM guy, right? He
I'm
was
with
obviously
Jacob.
Well, he's
I guess
backbanned, so
like a
that's
higher
kinda
talent.
hard.
Yeah, exactly. Like he's backbanned, but he was one of the most touted talents out of Brazil. But he's backbanned, so you can't use him. Done. Fury players locked out. Can't go further.
You start again.
We don't know enough about grassroots Counter Strike in Brazil. That's why we can't really comment on it with any facts. But I'm 100% sure that if you really were to look and hey, once again, had a guy who actually knew the scene, knew the area, could scout some player, or could actually facilitate, someone with the talent in order to bring into MIBR at some point and make them better. I'm 100% sure there must be someone.
So here's my counter argument for that. Considering how I guess the world of Counter Strike has expanded and there's more and more salary teams that can actually make a living off of this, don't you think a fair few of them have already been snapped up? Don't you think a fair few of those grassroots players would have been a Casarado or Yuri or an Art or an Able J? I think the playing field is, or like the talent pool is just
they need a
being
platform.
watered out in that sense because they've more and more of those players have gotten to platforms to the point where like Fury players would have been the obvious next step, but they're already spoken for.
I think what they need to do, and Jacob, you said they need a platform. Well, guess who owns the platform? Fallen, quite literally, until very recently, literally owned the platform. So with whatever involvement he still has with that, they should, if they really want to get back to being the best team in the world, like I mean legitimately the best team in the world, not keeping your head above water, not staying within the top 10. I think they're fine just staying in the top 10. But if you legitimately want to be in the best team in the world, I agree with your stance, Jacob, in the sense of they should go down, they should fucking walk on in there to the Gamers Academy pug system, and they should just look at all their options. Spend some time, spend some real time, but consider like one or two big roster moves. We've seen this a million times. The talent of today, or like the experience of today with the talent of tomorrow, mixes together and we get fucking amazing recipes. And sure, they may have just lost the chance on some up and coming talent. You could say the same thing happened to NIP when they didn't strike and try and get anybody from Fnatic earlier, or they didn't try and get anybody who was available from any of the other Swedish scenes earlier. Now they're suffering. Now they're having to grab players and try and teach them quickly. Or alternatively, they've taught themselves and now they're good enough to be poached. But where has Swedish Counter-Strike been for the last 2 years, right? It hasn't really been anywhere. So I think that go completely fresh, forget anything that we possibly know and just take a fucking risk, because the same situation as the FaZe thing. Can it be worse?
No, it probably can't. But so does that mean that you just straight up ditch Lucas right off the bat? Because I mean, again, like now you're looking at this being
I can keep
a
it
case
if
of,
you want.
but then you're still falling for your own, your old sins. You're recycling players. You're bringing up the same old suspects in that sense, right? You're not going grassroots. You're not going new. So is this a case of MIBR being lazy? Is this them not doing their due diligence in terms of just trying to do something new?
I think it's about having more priorities.
Well, I mean, that could very well be the case, but that is, in a sense, a result of just being content with where you're at. So, I mean, Coldzera, if he wants to leave and you still have a significant part of that core that's still just content with being top 10, you're never going to see any changes, right? Doesn't matter if you go grassroots or not. And I think with them just opting in for Lucas, I mean, pretty much just going the next step down out of who's available, right? Going to Luminosity, I think that's a bit of a telling sign as to, how much they care. At least for the time being. All
right. Well, I guess we've covered this one quite extensively. Strike, you got anything else on this one?
Not really. I think everything has been settled on the on
that's
the
a
topic.
good one. All right, so this last bit of this, we're not going to worry about any of the user questions because we got Blast Los Angeles. So we're going to fast forward to that, and then we'll continue with maybe some of the other
Can I just say something? Just one more thing on the topic of like changing of the guard regarding Get Right specifically. Just quickly, I feel like this has been blown out so much out of proportion compared to what has actually been announced or revealed, because a part of it is on an IP and on the vague, weird kind of announcement that they made regarding the future of Get Right on the team, because they did make it kind of look like he was going to be pushed into some managerial role or something like that, even though nothing like that has actually like been confirmed by Get Right. Quite the opposite, actually. He's refuted those several times on the stream during Cologne. So I feel like, just to clarify things, none of this is anything that's been confirmed. Quite the opposite, actually. It feels like Get Right is aiming to continue playing at least for a while. So yeah, just wanted to put things into perspective, I guess.
There's a bit of a storm in the teacup there at Cologne, I think, with the fact the grandeur of the event, plus Gerard being one of the greatest Counter-Strike players of all time based on his early days in CSGO and 1.6, obviously, that people maybe didn't understand the full gravitas of what was happening or not happening. And I think Chris, as somebody who is, we all are aware when you see him, he's a highly emotional, passionate guy. You know, for him, it was probably a really good thing to have all that support coming through. But we all know that he at no point had been like, hey guys, I'm quitting after this event, this is done. Or I'm quitting after the major, this is done. At no point did he ever say that. So I think that people may have jumped onto something that they thought was a possibility. And we
by the way,
ended up.
Moses was a part of that by saying like that he attended Get Right's retirement barbecue party or
that was a
something
joke.
like that.
That was a joke.
That's the thing,
Unfortunately, it didn't translate.
I definitely didn't translate because I thought he was being serious. So yeah, exactly.
I don't even think that the team themselves know, right? That's the problem, and they themselves have miscommunicated. Because there was, I remember we were doing a desk chat during Cologne, and there was an interview with, was it Riz, who like said something we hadn't.
He
heard
didn't know
before
what to say. Yeah,
he didn't know what to say, and he was like most definitely out of the team. You know, as the decision had already been made. Whereas you see Forrest going out publicly in interviews and saying that they judge, you know, after the major, and maybe there's still a chance he plays at the team. So it's like they themselves don't know how to communicate that properly either. So sure thing, it's blown out of proportions, but it's horrible communication from the side of NIP anyway.
I think it's a Zipnik situation, but it's just a public one. It's like, hey dude, you're on your last kind of chance here. If you perform, we'll review in the future. If you don't, well, you're definitely out, right? That's pretty much where we're at with that. But let's move forward to Blast because it is 10 past 10. We are 7 past. We're 7 minutes over. We'll wrap this one up pretty quick, and then we'll whack this one out. So what I want to do is I'll quickly run everyone through what this event is. Blast LA, obviously, if you haven't been keeping up with the news, well, I'm glad you're here. If you are here and you're going to spam shit about Blast being shit, then you can get out of here because we're still going to have a good conversation about the teams in attendance, which has nothing to do with any of the agendas which you cunts may be pushing. So, the teams in attendance, Liquid, NRG, FaZe Clan, MIBR,
Jesus Christ. I just
Renegades,
noticed the ranking on Cloud9.
and Cloud9 in the mix. Now, we don't need to talk about Liquid. They talk about themselves. We already covered FaZe, so we don't need to talk about them. We already covered MIBR, so we don't need to talk about them. We only need to talk about 3 teams. And we're going to talk about fucking Cloud9 because we already spoke about them. So if you weren't here at the start of the conversation, we spoke about Mixwell, we spoke about the new players there. Cloud9 in this tournament are, without a doubt, the lowest seeded team. So let's just set this. Get your fucking yay or nay buttons out. Does anybody here think that Cloud9 will win a game at Blast LA?
Win a game.
Win a game. Just win a map. Keeping in mind there is a lot of best of ones.
Oh, I'm actually surprised that you
all right.
it, yes.
We're all converted here. We all believe it.
Yeah, exactly. I thought I was going to go up against the crowd again.
All right. So, as 4 clear Cloud9 fans here, here's, I guess, the collective logic, and you guys can say yes or no to this. I assume the collective logic is we just discussed FaZe and MIBR being in turmoil or struggling. We also don't know exactly what's happening with either of those rosters at this very point in time. Not only that as a factor, this Cloud9 roster we already talked about does have a decent amount of potential based on the players in this team. And they could, in the best of 1, considering they're just going to be geeking out hard on about 3 maps because of the format, could upset one of these opponents who they have a lot of data on. Are there anyone who wants to add anything to that?
No, I think they have a reasonable chance against, like, let's say 4 of these teams. I don't think they have a reasonable chance to be Liquid. Not unless they just massively fuck up.
It's a domestic lineup, though. Don't forget that.
Fuck that. fuck that. Any of the other 4 matchups, I feel like they have a reasonable chance. I'm not going to put them anywhere close to 50% against either of them just because we have no idea, right? We can't know. But I would just give them like a semi-reasonable chance against any of the others. So for them to lose all 4 of them while having like a solid chance to pull off an upset would not be reasonable. So I'd say they will win one or something. Yeah.
Okay, so this is the next yeah or nay question: do we think that Renegades' form is like they will not achieve the same level of Counter-Strike as what they did earlier in the year?
Do we think or do we not think?
Do we
sorry.
Do we push buttons or not?
Yeah, press buttons. Do we think they will hit the same level as they did earlier in the year?
All right.
I guess we can't. Here we go. We've got it. It's working.
Fuck, no. I was gonna say yes, but no.
All right. Well, because you... I guess you were going to say yes. Jacob, why do you think they won't hit the same level?
I just think they peaked. I think what we saw during the major and the minor was the best way we're going to see of Renegades. I don't think.
Do you think the org was a factor?
Potentially, yeah. I think the hard work in the practice was a factor. I think the fact that they isolated themselves in Poland for 5 weeks and just played Counter-Strike day in, day out was a big factor. Also considering that during the time, there was a lot of teams who were struggling. Astralis were the only team that you knew for a fact was going to come into top shape to that major. I think they benefited a lot from that. I think it's a good team. I think they're good players. I think Jacob is a phenomenal player. I think JKS obviously is even better. I think SR has done a great job with the calling, but I think when you look over the lineup, like they reached their limit. Like it's a lineup that has gone to its full potential, and if they can be a top 10 team consistently, they should be happy.
Okay. However, why do you think? Is similar situation or?
Similar sense, yeah. A lot of it being stars aligning for them in Poland. I think, again, a lot of it comes off of hard work. The fact, as Jacob mentioned, they straight up just barricaded themselves inside their practice rooms for 5 weeks straight in Poland, going through the minors and all that stuff leading up to the actual major playoffs. I mean, I know that for a fact because, I mean, even after they were done with practice hours, they would still just scrim out nonstop. I would be playing games with Jacob until like early morning every single day, when he was done practicing, because he just wanted to be at peak performance. He had fun playing Counter-Strike. So I think that definitely did a lot for them. I also think the AUG changes a bit of a hit for a lot of teams, not necessarily just Renegades, but I think they're going to hit the brunt of it simply because pound for pound individually, if you look outside of JKS and JKIM, they don't necessarily have the strongest individuals. I still think that with a single roster change, they can come back to, I guess, previous heights, or they can reach that level that they had at Katowice. But as it stands right now, I think we've seen the best out of the Australians that we can expect.
Okay.
I was initially kind of going to say yes, just because I haven't completely given up on them. I feel like it's still kind of catching up to what they've had in Poland. I thought this was going to be Cologne was going to be the tournament where they come back to at least a similar level, where they show up with a decent result at least. I didn't expect them to like make it like a solid top 4 or go to the final or anything like that. I thought they had a reasonable chance at playoffs, and I was hoping for them to show up. When they started having those issues with the lineup, I did mention that I'm a little bit worried about them losing the confidence, which is basically the reason I said no in the end, because I feel like without it, they've kind of already missed the boat where like teams like Ensign Vitality have gone up, and obviously they have gone down in the meantime, and now they have so much catching up to do to some of those teams that I feel like they're too behind to ever do that. So that's why I said no in the end. But if by a chance they ever gain back that confidence, I feel like that's possible. I just don't see it happening at this point.
Okay. That's fair enough one right there. So we've covered Cloud9, we spoke about Renegades, we already covered MIBR and FaZe, we won't do that again now. So that really just leaves NRG as the team because we talked about Liquid earlier. So I guess NRG has been hashed out quite a lot. We would have spoken about them as a team. What we saw with Stan was probably more than what we could have expected as their first showing. So instead of spending too much time talking about something is still yet to completely unfold, we'll decompile it more after they get to play. Let's do this. Let's just we'll go around the circle here. We'll start with Halvor, and then we'll go to Striker and across the screen. Who do you think is going to win Blast LA, and who's going to be in the final versus them?
I'm going to shock you by saying Liquid are going to win it, and I think Energy are going to be in the finals versus them.
Okay. Striker?
Fuck, man, this is pretty hard actually. And that's the cop out answer, right? That's pretty much what I guess everybody should kind of expect.
It's the best of one.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like the best chance of that happening for sure. So I agree, Liquid Energy would make the most sense. I would put like an outside chance to FaZe if Nico comes back to a decent level.
Okay.
To going into the final, not winning the event.
You got Liquid?
Yeah.
Okay, Jacob, who you got?
Liquid in the final, going up against their domestic partners in Cloud9, and you all know what can happen in such a game, when two teams who know each other that well and has that much history face each other. So Cloud9 is going to win the entire thing, and Chat, you will have to be converted as a Cloud9 fanboy.
I already am. I'm going to wear a Cloud9
Well,
fan
you'll have
on
to
the
do,
analyst
you'll
desk
have to
if
get
I'm
a
able to
jersey,
get one.
you'll have to get a hat, you'll have to get the whole package.
A tattoo.
I won't
You know
get a tattoo, but I'll do the rest of it.
All right.
You get a butt tattoo of Cloud9's logo if they win Blast Pro Series Miami or Los
No,
Angeles.
no, I've already made one bet today. I won't be making any more for a little while.
Oh, yeah.
On that lovely little note there, ladies and gentlemen, as we're 15 minutes over our scheduled time, we will be closing this one down. Thank you for joining us for HLTV.org, episode number 23. Halvor and Jacob, thank you for joining us for our Counter-Strike discussions. I believe next time we'll have Prof back. We might set up a fantasy league as soon as this becomes available. You got any, like, I guess on podcasts what they normally do at this point is like they'll plug their like tour dates and stuff. You got any tour dates you want to plug, Jacob?
Follow my Instagram, please.
Okay. Halvor, you got anything?
not even going to mention what.
You're not gonna stream.
Okay,
You're not gonna
that's fair
stream.
enough.
Didn't you say you were gonna stream tomorrow? I'm just gonna put that out there.
You know what? Fuck that.
There you go. Well, hey, Halvor, you got anything you want to advertise?
No, nothing to plug really. Just yeah.
All right, I got
for
something
having
to plug. Anchor.fm/HLTV. Head over there for all the audio podcasts. What else? Yeah, we don't have a date for the next one, but I'm assuming if the internet in the hotel that I'm staying at, which it probably won't be, next Monday, I can maybe do a podcast. I'm going to be in America. Anyway, goodbye,
I'm gonna
everybody.
be there too, so maybe
we do it live.
We can figure it out. Yeah.
We do it live. All right, goodbye, everybody. See you next time. Thank you for tuning in. Peace out, A-Town. Keep loving Counter-Strike, etc. Bye.
Love you.